Hello, friends. Welcome to the Sleep Aliens. Did you know that nearly 80% of those who watch my videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. The first time I saw it, I thought it was just another late-night trucker who'd forgotten to turn on his low beams. Highway 50 stretched before me like a ribbon of cracked asphalt disappearing into absolute darkness. They call it the loneliest road in America. And on nights like this, at 2:47 a.m. with nothing but sagebrush and silence for company, I understood why. My patrol car's headlights carved a tunnel through the blackness, illuminating the faded yellow line that separated me from the emptiness on either side. I'm Lance Eddington. Been with the Nevada Highway Patrol for 7 years now, assigned to the Ely sector. Most nights out here are routine, monotonous even. The occasional speeder, a breakdown, maybe a drunk driver weaving between lanes. But this night, this particular Tuesday in late September, would shatter every notion I had about what's routine. The temperature gauge on my dashboard read 52 degrees, unseasonably cold for this time of year. I had the heater running low, just enough to keep the windshield from fogging. The radio crackled with static every few minutes, the only sound besides the steady hum of my engine and the occasional pop of gravel under my tires when I drifted toward the shoulder. Elena Valdez, my dispatch coordinator back at the station, had checked in 20 minutes earlier. Her voice had been steady, professional, as always. Unit 47, status check. All clear on 50, eastbound past mile marker 112, I'd responded, watching the odometer tick upward. Quiet night. Copy that, Lance. Stay sharp out there. If only I'd known what she meant. I first noticed the light in my rearview mirror at exactly 2:51 a.m. I remember because I'd just glanced at the clock, calculating how much longer until my shift ended at 6 o'clock. 4 hours, 9 minutes. The light appeared as a single white dot, bright and perfectly centered behind me, maybe a quarter mile back. At first, I didn't think much of it. Highway 50 sees its share of late-night traffic, truckers mostly, making the haul between Ely and Carson City. But as I watched, something felt off. The light didn't waver, didn't bounce with the road's imperfections. It just hung there, steady and bright, like a star that had descended too far. I eased off the accelerator slightly, dropping from 65 to 60. Standard procedure when you want to get a look at who's behind you. Most drivers will pass, especially if they've been following for a while. This one didn't. The light maintained its distance, neither gaining nor falling back. The hair on my neck prickled. 7 years of instinct kicked in. I reached for the radio. Unit 47 to dispatch. Static answered me. Heavy, crackling static that made my teeth ache. I adjusted the frequency dial, but the interference only grew worse. The digital display flickered once, twice, then stabilized. When Elena's voice finally broke through, it sounded distant, like she was calling from the bottom of a well. "Ents? Your signal's breaking up. What's your—" "I've got a vehicle following me eastbound on 50. Approximately mile marker 115 now. Single headlight maintaining fixed distance. Attempting traffic stop." I flipped on my light bar. Red and blue strobed across the desert, painting the sagebrush in alternating colors of emergency. The light behind me didn't react. Didn't slow, didn't speed up, didn't pull over. Just kept following at that exact same distance, as if my lights meant nothing. "Lance, did you say single headlight?" Elena's voice crackled with concern. "Be careful, could be a motorcycle." But I knew motorcycles. This wasn't a motorcycle. The light was too bright, too white, too perfectly round, and there was no sound. Even with my windows up, I should have heard something. The whine of an engine, the rush of wind. Highway 50 at night is so quiet you can hear a semi coming from 2 miles away. This thing, whatever it was, made no sound at all. I accelerated to 70. The light stayed with me, dropped to 55. Still there, exactly the same distance back. My speedometer needle danced across the numbers, but that light never wavered, never changed. It was like it was tethered to me, locked into position by some invisible string. My mouth went dry. This wasn't right. None of this was right. Dispatch, the vehicle is not responding to lights. I'm going to... The radio died completely. Not static this time, just dead silence, like someone had cut the power. I twisted the dial frantically, but nothing. The display screen went dark, then flickered back to life, showing nothing but zeros. And then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The speedometer, it had frozen. The needle was stuck at 65 miles per hour, not moving, not even trembling. But I could feel the car decelerating. I could see the mile markers passing more slowly. My foot was off the gas completely now, and the car was coasting. Yet the speedometer insisted I was maintaining 65. The light in my mirror grew brighter. Not closer, just brighter, as if someone was turning up a dimmer switch. The white glow began to fill my entire rearview mirror, spilling over into my side mirrors, casting shadows inside the car that shouldn't exist. My hands on the steering wheel looked pale, almost translucent in that strange light. I should have been terrified. Part of me was. But another part, the part that had been trained to observe and report, was cataloging details with mechanical precision. No visible vehicle behind the light. No sound. No heat shimmer in the air. No reflection off the pavement. Just pure, sourceless white light that defied every law of physics I understood. My training said to maintain control, to follow procedure. But what procedure covers this? What section of the patrol manual explains what to do when physics stops working? I pressed the accelerator. The car responded, surging forward, the engine roaring. But the speedometer stayed frozen at 65. And the light, that impossible light, stayed exactly where it was, neither advancing nor retreating, just existing in that fixed point behind me, like it had always been there and always would be. The dashboard clock blinked. 2:58 a.m. became 2:58 a.m. became 2:58 a.m., the digits refreshing but never changing. Time itself seemed to be holding its breath. "Elena," I said into the dead radio, knowing she couldn't hear me but needing to speak anyway. "If you're recording this, if the dash cam is getting any of this, I need you to know something's wrong out here. Something's really wrong." The light flared brighter still. The interior of my car bleached white, every shadow erased, every surface glowing. I squinted against the glare, one hand leaving the wheel to shield my eyes. The road ahead was barely visible now, just a faint gray ribbon in a sea of white. And then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the light vanished. Not dimmed, not faded. Vanished. One moment it was there, filling my mirrors, filling my car, filling my vision. The next moment, darkness. Complete and total darkness, made worse by the after images dancing across my retinas. I blinked hard, trying to clear my vision. The speedometer jumped back to life, needle dropping rapidly as the car slowed without power. The clock suddenly read 3:02 a.m. 4 minutes. 4 minutes had passed, but I could only account for one, maybe two at most. The radio burst to life with a shriek of static that made me jump. "NC, Lance, respond. What's your status? You went dark for 4 minutes." Elena's voice was sharp with panic, professional composure cracking at the edges. I grabbed the radio with a shaking hand. "I'm here. I'm okay. I paused, looking in the rearview mirror at the empty road behind me, at the normal darkness that revealed nothing unusual. How did I explain this? I had a vehicle following me. "It's gone now." "Gone?" "Lance, your GPS signal disappeared completely. One moment you were at marker 115, the next you were at 118. We lost all telemetry from your unit. What happened?" I looked at the odometer. She was right. 3 miles. I'd traveled 3 miles and couldn't remember any of it. The road behind me stretched empty. The road ahead equally desolate. The only evidence that anything had happened was my racing heart and the cold sweat soaking through my uniform shirt. "I don't know," I said quietly. "I honestly don't know." But that wasn't true. I knew something had happened. Something impossible. Something that my mind was already trying to rationalize away as a hallucination, fatigue, maybe contaminated coffee from the truck stop. Anything but the truth that was already settling into my bones like ice. I wasn't alone on this road. I had never been alone. "Come back to station," Elena said. "End of shift. Come back now." I wanted to. God, I wanted to turn around, head back to the fluorescent lights and solid walls of the highway patrol station, to normalcy and sanity and everything that made sense. But my hands wouldn't turn the wheel. Instead, almost against my will, I kept driving east on Highway 50, deeper into the darkness, because some part of me knew this wasn't over. The clock read 3:07 a.m. The night was still young, and the loneliest road in America had just become lonelier. The Eli Highway Patrol Station sits on the northern edge of town, a squat concrete building that's seen better decades. The parking lot was mostly empty when I pulled in at 3:42 a.m., just 2 other patrol units and Elena's aging Subaru. The fluorescent lights inside cast harsh shadows through the windows, making the building look like a ship adrift in an ocean of darkness. My hands were still trembling as I killed the engine. I'd driven the remaining 30 miles in a fog, my mind replaying those 4 missing minutes over and over, trying to find some rational explanation that refused to materialize. The dashboard clock worked fine now. The speedometer responded normally. The radio crackled with routine traffic from other units, their voices a comforting reminder that reality still functioned somewhere. Elena was waiting by the entrance before I even got out of the car. She's 43, a grandmother of 2, with steel gray hair she keeps in a tight bun and eyes that miss nothing. She'd been with Highway Patrol Dispatch for 18 years, and I'd never seen her look worried. Until now. "Inside," she said, holding the door. "Now." The break room smelled like burnt coffee and industrial cleaner. Elena pointed to a chair and I sat, grateful for something solid beneath me. She poured 2 cups of coffee from the ancient machine in the corner, both of us ignoring the fact that the pot had probably been sitting there since yesterday. Some nights, you need the ritual more than the caffeine. "Start from the beginning," she said, sliding 1 cup across the table. "Everything." So I told her, the light appearing in my mirror, the frozen speedometer, the radio dying, the 4 missing minutes. I kept my voice level, clinical, reporting facts like I'd been trained. But I could hear how it sounded, how crazy it sounded, and I watched her face for signs of disbelief or worse, pity. She listened without interrupting, her coffee untouched, her eyes never leaving mine. When I finished, silence filled the room. The overhead lights hummed. The clock on the wall ticked. Normal sounds in an increasingly abnormal night. "The dash cam," she said finally. "Did you check it?" I hadn't. I'd been so shaken that I'd forgotten about the camera mounted on my windshield. The one that recorded everything. Proof. Evidence. Something tangible that would show I wasn't losing my mind. We went to the equipment room where the patrol car's data gets downloaded. Elena pulled up my unit's footage on the main computer, her fingers flying across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. The timestamp showed 2:47 a.m., right when I'd first noticed the light. The video played. Highway 50 stretched ahead exactly as I remembered. The dashboard was visible at the bottom of the frame, speedometer reading 65. Then I saw myself in the reflection of the windshield, checking the rear-view mirror, but the mirror showed nothing. Just road and darkness. "Wait," I said, leaning closer. "Go back, right there, 2:51. That's when I saw it." Elena rewound the footage. We watched it again, my eyes clearly tracking something in the mirror. My hand reaching for the radio, my lips moving as I called it in. But the camera saw nothing. The road behind me remained empty, unlit, normal. "This doesn't make sense," Elena muttered. She fast-forwarded to 2:58, to when the light had flooded my car. On screen, nothing changed. No white glow, no bleaching of the interior, just me, driving, one hand shielding my eyes from a light source that didn't exist. Then the video skipped, not a subtle glitch, a complete jump. 2:58 a.m. to 3:02 a.m., instant transition. 4 minutes gone in a fraction of a second. The GPS overlay in the corner of the screen jumped from mile marker 1:15 to 1:18. "There," I said, pointing. "You see that? The time jump, the location jump. Something happened during those 4 minutes." Elena rewound and played it again. Same result. The footage was continuous right up until 2:58. Then it simply skipped ahead. No corruption, no static, no visual indication of a break. Just 4 minutes of data that had been excised as cleanly as a surgeon's cut. "I need to check something," Elena said. She pulled up the telemetry data from my patrol car, streams of information that tracked everything from speed to fuel consumption to GPS coordinates. Lines of data scrolled across the screen until she found what she was looking for. "Your speed," she said, highlighting a section. "From 2:51 to 2:58, your speed is logged at exactly 65 miles per hour. Not 64.9, not 65.1, exactly 65,000 for 7 straight minutes. That's not possible," I said. "I was accelerating, decelerating, trying to get away from it." "I know, I heard you on the radio, but the data says you maintained perfect speed." She scrolled down. "And your fuel consumption during this time is anomalous. You should have used approximately 0.3 gallons based on distance and speed. Instead, you used 0.11 gallons, like the car was barely running." My coffee had gone cold, but I drank it anyway, needing something to do with my hands. Elena pulled up more data screens, each one showing impossible readings. Brake pressure that fluctuated wildly while the video showed my foot nowhere near the brake. Engine temperature that dropped 10 degrees in 60 seconds. Electrical draw that spiked to 200% capacity for exactly 40 seconds without blowing a single fuse. "Elena," I said slowly, "what am I looking at?" She sat back, removing her glasses and rubbing her eyes. In the harsh fluorescent light, she looked older, tired. Either your car experienced a total systems malfunction that somehow corrected itself, or what? She met my eyes. Or something interfered with it. Something that affected the vehicle, the cameras, the data collection, but left just enough evidence to prove it wasn't a hallucination. The implication hung between us like smoke. I wanted to reject it, to laugh it off, to find some reasonable explanation. But I'd seen that light. I'd felt time break. I'd lost 4 minutes of my life and gained 3 miles of road I couldn't remember traveling. "Has this happened before?" I asked. "Have other units reported anything like this?" Elena was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood, walked to a filing cabinet in the corner, and pulled out a folder. It was thin, maybe a dozen pages marked with a date from 6 months ago. She dropped it on the table in front of me. Unit 23, Dave Hendricks, March 15th, 3 in the morning. Highway 50 westbound near mile marker 97. I opened the folder. The first page was a patrol report written in Dave's familiar cramped handwriting. As I read, my coffee cup slowly descended to the table, forgotten. Dave had reported following what he thought was a disabled vehicle. Single light, no response to signals. He'd called it in to dispatch, then the radio had died. When he'd regained communication 17 minutes later, he was 9 miles further down the road with no memory of how he'd gotten there. His dash cam footage showed a similar skip, though his was longer, 17 minutes versus my 4. "Where's Dave now?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. "Retired. Took early retirement 2 weeks after this incident. Moved to Arizona, said he was done with night shifts." Elena pulled out another folder, this one even thinner. Unit 12, Rebecca Santos, last October. 11-minute gap, 6 miles. She transferred to day shift the next week. 2 more folders followed. Different dates, different officers, same stretch of Highway 50. All of them at night. All of them involving a mysterious light, radio interference, missing time, and gap in their dashcam footage. Why didn't anyone tell me about this? My voice came out harder than I intended. Because what were we supposed to say? That Highway 50 might be haunted? That we have 4 separate officers reporting lost time and unexplained phenomena? The brass won't touch it, Lance. They file the reports and pretend it's equipment malfunction or fatigue. She tapped the folders. But it's not, you know it's not. I looked at the stack of incidents, at the pattern emerging like a constellation in data. 4 officers over 18 months, all on the same highway, all experiencing variations of what I'd just gone through. And those were just the ones who'd reported it. How many others had kept quiet, afraid of being ridiculed or doubted? "What do I do?" I asked. Elena gathered the folders, her movements precise and controlled. "Officially, you write a report citing equipment failure and request a full diagnostic on your unit. Unofficially." She looked at me, and in her eyes I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. You decide if you want to keep driving Highway 50 at night. The fluorescent lights flickered once, just once, but it was enough to make us both jump. The room suddenly felt too small, the walls too close. Through the window, I could see the eastern horizon beginning to lighten, the stars fading as dawn approached. "There's something else," Elena said quietly. "Something I haven't told anyone, not even the brass." I waited. Outside, a bird began to sing, greeting the coming sunrise with pure, uncomplicated joy. The week before Dave's incident, I was going through old dispatch logs. Routine audit, nothing special. I found a record from 1987 before digital logs, before GPS. A highway patrol officer named Tom Parker reported following a bright white light on Highway 50. He said it moved unlike anything he'd ever seen, appeared and disappeared suddenly, and caused his radio to malfunction. What happened to him? He finished his report, went off duty, and was never heard from again. His car was found 3 days later parked at mile marker 103, keys in the ignition, engine cold. No sign of Tom Parker anywhere. Search and rescue combed 50 miles in every direction. Nothing. The bird outside sang on, but its song sounded different now. Less joyful, more like a warning. They ruled it a voluntary disappearance, Elena continued. Said he probably had personal problems, decided to walk away from his life. But his family said no way, said he loved his job, loved his life. They spent years looking for him, never found a trace. You think the light— I don't know what I think, she interrupted. But I know that Highway 50 has a history, and I know that something happens out there that we can't explain, can't predict, and can't prevent. All we can do is document it and hope that if we gather enough data, eventually it'll make sense. I thought about those 4 missing minutes, those 3 unremembered miles. What had happened during that gap? Had I been driving, or had something else moved my car? Had I been conscious? Was there a version of me that experienced those minutes but couldn't bring the memories back? The questions spiraled, multiplying faster than I could process them. My head began to ache, that special kind of pain that comes from thinking too hard about things that shouldn't exist. Go home, Elena said. Get some sleep. We'll run diagnostics on your unit this morning, and you can file your report this afternoon. And Lance? She placed a hand on my shoulder, a gesture that was almost motherly. If you decide you want day shifts instead, no one would blame you. Least of all me. I nodded, but we both knew I wouldn't ask for reassignment. Whatever was happening on Highway 50, I was part of it now. Running wouldn't change that. Dave Hendricks had run, Rebecca Santos had run, and in their absence, the phenomena had simply chosen new witnesses. I drove home as the sun broke over the Ruby Mountains, painting the desert in shades of amber and gold. The drive should have been beautiful, but I couldn't appreciate it. My mind was back on that dark highway, replaying those minutes before the skip, searching for some detail I might have missed. I saw it again in my mind, that perfectly white light, steady and impossible. I heard again the death of my radio, the silence that followed. I felt again that sense of time breaking, of reality becoming negotiable. And underneath it all, a new feeling was growing. Not fear anymore, but something else. Curiosity, compulsion, a need to understand that overrode common sense and self-preservation instincts. Whatever it was, it pulled at me like gravity. That night, I dreamed of light. I didn't sleep well. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that light in my rearview mirror, white and patient and impossible. The dreams came in fragments. Driving down an endless highway, the speedometer frozen, time becoming elastic and strange. In one dream, I looked in the mirror and saw my own face staring back, except my eyes were pure white, glowing from within. I woke up at 2:47 p.m., the exact time I'd first seen the light translated to afternoon. The coincidence wasn't lost on me. The diagnostic report on my patrol car came back clean. Every system functioning normally, no anomalies, no explanation for the data irregularities Elena and I had documented. The mechanic, a guy named Rodriguez who'd been working on highway patrol vehicles for 20 years, said it was the cleanest bill of health he'd ever seen. Whatever happened out there, he told me, it didn't leave a trace. Engines perfect, electrical systems perfect, transmissions perfect. It's like the car just rolled off the factory line. But something had happened. The data proved it, even if the car itself bore no physical evidence. I filed my report that afternoon, keeping it clinical and vague. Equipment malfunction, possible radio interference, temporary loss of GPS signal. I didn't mention the light. I didn't mention the missing 4 minutes. I definitely didn't mention that I'd seen something that defied physics and reason. The shift commander, Captain Morrison, read it over and nodded. Happens sometimes out on 50, he said. Long, empty road, middle of the night. Your mind plays tricks. Get some rest, Eddington. You're back on duty tomorrow, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Same shift, same road, same darkness waiting. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee I didn't drink and a phone I couldn't bring myself to pick up. I should call someone. My sister in Reno, maybe, or my buddy from the academy who worked patrol up in Elko. Talk it through, get it out of my system, let someone rational explain why I was letting this get to me. But I didn't call anyone, because deep down, beneath the doubt and the fear and the confusion, I knew what I was going to do. I was going back. 10:17 p.m. I clocked in, checked my equipment, and did a thorough walk-around of my patrol car. Everything looked normal. Elena was on dispatch again, her voice steady and professional when she cleared me for patrol. If she was worried about me heading back out to Highway 50, she didn't show it. Unit 47, you're clear for eastbound patrol starting at mile marker 95. Quiet night so far. Copy that, dispatch. Eastbound from 95. The night was cloudless, the moon a thin crescent providing almost no light. Stars packed the sky in numbers you never see near cities. The Milky Way a ghostly river overhead. It should have been beautiful. Instead, it felt like too many eyes watching. I drove the route methodically, maintaining exactly 65 miles per hour, watching the odometer tick past each mile marker. 95, 100, 105. Normal traffic passed me heading west. A semi hauling freight. A couple in an SUV. A lone motorcyclist who waved as he passed. Ordinary people living ordinary lives, unaware that something impossible haunted this stretch of asphalt. 110, 112, 115. This was where it had happened last night, where the light had first appeared. My hands tightened on the wheel. My eyes flicked constantly to the rearview mirror, searching the darkness for that telltale white glow. The radio crackled with routine traffic. The speedometer held steady. Everything was normal. 116, 117, 118. Nothing. Just highway and darkness and the steady thrum of my engine. Maybe it was over. Maybe whatever had targeted me last night had moved on, chosen someone else, disappeared back to wherever impossible things go when they're finished playing with human minds. I was almost disappointed. Unit 47 status check. Elena's voice cut through my thoughts. All clear at mile marker 121. Quiet run so far. Copy that. Stay safe out there, Lance. Always do. I continued east, my vigilance gradually relaxing. Maybe this was the answer. Face your fears. Prove to yourself that they were just fatigue and stress and an overactive imagination. Come back to the scene, find it empty and normal, and let rational thought reassert itself. I was thinking this, letting my guard down, when I saw it. Not behind me this time, ahead. 3 lights this time, arranged in a perfect triangle, hovering above the highway maybe a quarter mile ahead. Not moving, not floating. Just there, as if they'd always been there and I'd just now noticed. My breath caught. The rational part of my brain insisted they were cell towers, radio antennas, aircraft warning lights on some structure. But there were no structures out here, just empty desert stretching to distant mountains. I slowed the car, my training warring with my instinct to turn around and drive as fast as possible in the opposite direction. The speedometer dropped to 55, then 45. The lights stayed where they were, perfect and geometric and patient. At 35 miles per hour, I reached for the radio. Dispatch, this is Unit 47, static, immediate and overwhelming, like white noise turned up to painful levels. I jerked the radio away from my face, and through the static, I thought I heard something. Not Elena's voice. Something else. A pattern in the noise rising and falling like speech but in no language I'd ever heard. The triangular lights began to move. Not erratically like last night's light, but with deliberate purpose. They descended toward the highway, growing brighter as they approached. My headlights illuminated the road ahead, and I could see now that there was something beneath the lights, A shape, dark and angular, that made no sense to my eyes. My brain kept trying to identify it, categorize it, and failing utterly. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around. Instead, I stopped the car in the middle of Highway 50, put it in park, and just stared. The object was massive, easily the size of a commercial aircraft, but it made no sound. No engine roar, no whistle of wind, nothing. It hovered 30 feet above the highway, and in the wash of my headlights I could see details that made my skin crawl. The surface looked metallic but not smooth, covered in patterns that seemed to shift and reconfigure as I watched. The 3 lights at its corners pulsed in sequence, white fading to blue to white again. And beneath it, standing on the highway in the space between my car and the object, was something else. A figure, humanoid but wrong, too tall, too thin, proportions that didn't match anything in nature. It stood perfectly still, and though it had no visible eyes, I felt its attention like a physical weight pressing against me. My hand found the door handle. I don't know if I was planning to run or to approach. The decision was taken from me when the figure raised one impossibly long arm, palm outward in a gesture that could have been greeting or warning. Time broke again. I saw the figure, I saw the object, I saw Highway 50 stretching infinitely in both directions. And then I saw nothing, everything. Lights that moved with purpose through dark spaces between stars. Highways that connected not cities but worlds. Consciousness that transcended biology, vast and patient and curious. And myself, Lance Eddington, seen from outside, a tiny spark of awareness in a universe full of such sparks. All of us watched, all of us studied, all of us part of something incomprehensibly larger. I came back to myself, slumped over my steering wheel, my head resting on my arms, the car still idling in park. The dashboard clock read 4:23 a.m. I'd lost 6 hours. The highway ahead was empty. No lights, no object, no figure. Just road and darkness and the sound of my own ragged breathing. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the wheel. My shirt was soaked with sweat despite the cold night air. The radio crackled to life. Elena's voice, frantic. 47, respond. Lance, if you can hear this, respond immediately. I grabbed the radio with numb fingers. I'm here, I'm okay. Okay? Lance, you disappeared again. Your GPS went dark at mile marker 123 4 hours ago. We've had units searching for you. We called in county. Where are you? I looked at the mile marker closest to me, illuminated in my headlights. Mile marker 178. 55 miles from where I'd stopped. 55 miles I didn't remember traveling. I don't know, I said honestly. I don't know where I've been. They found me 20 minutes later. 3 patrol cars converging on my position with lights flashing like a small constellation. Captain Morrison himself was there, his face a mixture of relief and anger. He pulled open my door and looked me over like he was expecting to find injuries. What the hell happened, Eddington? I wanted to tell him. I wanted to explain about the lights, the object, the figure standing on the highway, the sensation of my consciousness being pulled apart and shown something vast and inexplicable. But the words wouldn't come. They felt inadequate, too small to contain what I'd experienced. Equipment failure, I heard myself say. Radio went out, GPS died. I must have kept driving on autopilot. It was a lie. We both knew it was a lie. But it was a lie we could both accept, could both file reports about, could both move on from without questioning the nature of reality itself. Morrison studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. Get yourself checked out at the hospital. Full physical, psychological eval, the works. You're off duty pending medical clearance. I didn't argue. The other officers escorted me back to Ely, my patrol car following in a convoy like I was a dignitary or a prisoner. Maybe I was both. The hospital found nothing wrong. Perfect blood pressure, perfect heart rate, perfect neurological function. The psychological evaluation was trickier. I could tell the therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Reeves, knew I was holding something back. But when she asked directly if I'd experienced anything traumatic or unusual, I said no. Just fatigue, I explained. Long shifts, monotonous highway, the mind playing tricks. She didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes. But she cleared me for duty anyway with the recommendation that I vary my route and avoid solo night shifts for a while. Captain Morrison honored that recommendation. For the next 2 weeks, I worked day shifts, patrolling different highways, staying away from Highway 50 entirely. I partnered with other officers, spent my nights at home with the lights on, tried to convince myself that I could return to normal. But I couldn't. Something had changed in me during those missing hours. I found myself watching the sky at odd moments, searching for lights that shouldn't be there. I caught myself calculating distances and times, trying to figure out where I'd been during those 6 lost hours. Had I driven those 55 miles, or had I been taken somewhere else and returned? And if I'd been taken where? The questions multiplied faster than I could suppress them. Elena noticed, of course. She always noticed. 3 weeks after my second incident, she found me in the break room, staring at a map of Highway 50. Dozens of pins marking locations where officers had reported anomalies over the years. "Still thinking about it," she said. It wasn't a question. "How do you stop?" I asked. "How do you experience something like that and just go back to normal?" She sat down across from me, her hands wrapped around a coffee mug. "You don't. That's the secret they don't tell you. Everyone who's been through it, they don't go back to normal, they just get better at pretending." "Did it happen to you?" She was quiet for so long I thought she wouldn't answer. Then, 12 years ago, I was working late, heading home around 2 a.m. Took Highway 50 because it was faster. I saw lights that moved like nothing I'd ever seen. Lost 40 minutes. When I came to, I was parked at a rest stop 20 miles away with no memory of getting there. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because what good would it do? We can't explain it, can't prevent it, can't control it. All we can do is survive it and try to understand." I looked at the map, at all those pins clustering along a 100-mile stretch of Highway 50. A pattern, undeniable and inexplicable. "What do you think they want?" "I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe they're just observing. Maybe we're the anomaly to them, and they're trying to figure us out the same way we're trying to figure them out." The thought was simultaneously terrifying and oddly comforting. We weren't special, weren't chosen. We were just samples, data points, moments of curiosity in a larger study we couldn't begin to comprehend. "Are you going back?" Elena asked. "Back to night patrol on 50? I looked at her, and in her eyes I saw the same thing I felt. Fear, yes, but also fascination. The need to know, to understand, even if understanding came at a price. "Yeah," I said. "I'm going back." She nodded slowly. "Then take this." She slid a small device across the table. It looked like a modified body camera, but with additional equipment I didn't recognize. Personal recorder. Civilian grade, not connected to any department systems. If something happens again, if you lose time again, this might capture something the official equipment misses. "Where did you get this?" "Let's just say I'm not the only one who wants answers." I pocketed the device. It felt heavy, significant, like I was crossing some threshold I couldn't uncross. I returned to night patrol on Highway 50 exactly 1 month after my second incident. Captain Morrison wasn't happy about it, but I'd passed all my evaluations and he couldn't justify keeping me off the road without admitting there was something out there that made the road unsafe. And that was a conversation nobody in authority wanted to have. Elena cleared me for patrol at 10 o'clock p.m. "Stay safe, Lance." "Always do," I replied, our standard exchange now carrying weight it had never held before. I drove east from Ely, the recorder Elena had given me clipped to my uniform alongside my official equipment. The night was clear, the stars bright, traffic was light, just the occasional vehicle heading in the opposite direction. Mile markers ticked by. 95, 105, 115, 123. I waited for the fear, for the urge to turn back, but it didn't come. Instead, I felt calm, prepared. Whatever was out here, whatever had happened to me twice before, I was ready to face it again. Not as a victim this time, but as a willing participant in something larger than myself. The radio crackled. "Unit 47, status?" "All clear," I said. "Mile marker 130 eastbound." "Copy that." I drove on through the darkness, between the stars above and the asphalt below, along America's loneliest road. And I watched, and I waited. Because I knew, with a certainty that transcended logic or reason, that it wasn't over. The lights would come again. I would lose time again. The figure would stand on the highway again, patient and curious and utterly alien. And when it happened, I would be ready. Not to run, not to hide, but to try to understand. The clock on my dashboard read 2:47 a.m. when I saw it in my rearview mirror. A single white light, bright and perfectly still, exactly where it had been that first night. I didn't speed up this time, didn't try to escape. Instead, I eased off the accelerator and waited to see what would happen next. The light grew brighter, but this time I was ready. My hand moved to the recorder Elena had given me, making sure it was active. Its small LED indicator glowing green. Whatever happened next, there would be evidence, proof that couldn't be dismissed or rationalized away. "Unit 47 to dispatch," I said calmly into the radio, watching the light maintain its position. "I have visual contact with an unidentified light source, mile marker 143, eastbound Highway 50. Static answered, but through it I could hear Elena's voice, distorted but present. "Copy. Lance, can you describe?" "Single white light, extremely bright, stationary approximately 200 yards behind my position. No visible vehicle. Light source appears to be hovering above road surface." The static grew worse, but I kept talking, describing everything I saw in precise detail. The training that had been drilled into me at the academy took over, turning terror into professional observation. If this was going to happen again, I was going to document every second of it. The light began to move forward, not like a vehicle accelerating, but like it was being pulled on an invisible track, smooth and unnaturally steady. It closed the distance between us without variation in speed, without any sense of mass or momentum, just pure movement, defying the physics that governed everything else on this highway. I kept my speed at 40 miles per hour, watching it approach in all three mirrors. The light grew larger, brighter, until it filled my entire field of vision behind me. The interior of my car began to glow, that same bone-white illumination that erased shadows and made everything look flat and unreal. "Dispatch, the light is—" The radio died mid-sentence, not with static this time, but with a clicking sound, sharp and rhythmic. Click, 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 like Morse code but faster, more complex. A pattern that my brain tried to decode and failed, the rhythm too alien to parse. My speedometer began to fluctuate. 65, 40, 90, 20. The needle swung wildly while my actual speed remained constant. The odometer digits started scrambling, numbers appearing that hadn't been invented yet, symbols that looked like corrupted computer code. And then the light overtook me. It didn't pass beside me like a normal vehicle. It passed over me, the brightness moving from behind to above to ahead in one fluid motion. I looked up through the windshield and saw it directly overhead, close enough that I should have been able to identify what it was attached to. But there was nothing, just light, sourceless and impossible, hovering 20 feet above my car. The engine died. Not sputtered, not coughed, just stopped instantly like someone had flipped a switch. My car rolled forward on momentum alone, slowing gradually. I didn't brake, didn't steer, just let it coast, watching the light above me pulse in that same rhythmic pattern as the clicking sound. The car came to a stop in the middle of Highway 50. In the sudden silence, I could hear my own heartbeat, fast and hard. I could hear my breathing, rapid and shallow, and underneath it all, I could hear something else. A hum so low it was almost subsonic, vibrating through the car's frame and into my bones. The light above me changed, not in brightness but in configuration. It split into 3 separate points, arranging themselves in that same triangular pattern I'd seen before. And in the space between those points, something began to materialize. I don't have better words for it. Materialize is the closest I can come. It wasn't there, and then it was, like reality was being rewritten in real time. A shape, massive and angular, made of surfaces that my eyes couldn't quite focus on. Every time I tried to look directly at it, my vision slipped away, drawn to the edges where the shape met the sky. The object hung there, silent and patient, directly above my patrol car. I sat frozen, hands still on the wheel, every instinct screaming at me to run, while every rational thought insisted that running would be pointless. Whatever this thing was, wherever it had come from, it had chosen me. Again. The driver's side door lock clicked open by itself. I stared at the door handle, my mind trying to process the implication. It wanted me to get out. It wanted me outside the car, exposed, vulnerable. Every horror movie I'd ever seen, every missing persons case I'd worked, every nightmare about abduction flashed through my mind in rapid succession. But I'd come back here for answers. I'd volunteered for this, and some part of me, the part that had never been satisfied with surface explanations, needed to see this through. I opened the door. The desert air hit me, cold and dry, carrying the scent of sage and dust. The hum was louder outside, not just a sound but a physical presence that made my teeth ache and my vision blur at the edges. I stepped away from the car, my legs unsteady, and looked up. The triangular configuration of lights pulsed once, twice, 3 times, and then the bottom of the object began to change. A section of its surface shifted, reconfigured, and opened, not like a mechanical door, but like the object was liquid, flowing into a new shape that included an aperture. Light spilled out from that opening, but different from the white glare I'd become accustomed to. This light was warmer, almost golden, and within it I could see movement. Shapes that might have been structures, might have been technology, might have been something else entirely. My brain kept trying to categorize what I was seeing and kept failing. And then I saw them, the figures, 3 of them, standing in that opening, backlit by the golden light. Tall and thin like the one I'd seen before, but I could see more details now. Their heads were larger than proportionately they should be, smooth and featureless except for those enormous dark eyes. Their bodies were covered in something that might have been clothing, or might have been their actual skin, a material that seemed to shimmer and shift in the light. One of them moved. Not walked, moved. One moment it was standing in the opening, the next it was on the ground beside my car, having traversed 30 feet of distance without any visible motion between points. Teleportation? Something else? I had no frame of reference for what I was witnessing. The figure stood there, perhaps 10 feet away from me, and I could feel its attention like a physical weight. Those black eyes held no expression I could read, no hint of emotion or intent. Yet, I felt something. Not quite thoughts, not quite feelings, but impressions. Curiosity, assessment, recognition. It recognized me, knew me from the previous encounters, and in that moment of recognition I understood something that made my blood run cold. This had always been deliberate. The first encounter, the second, now this. I wasn't a random target. I had been selected, chosen, tagged for observation like a research specimen. The figure raised one hand, 3 impossibly long fingers extending toward me, not threatening, but beckoning. Come closer. Come see. Come understand. I should have run. Should have dived back into my car, locked the doors, called for help on a radio that wouldn't work. But I didn't. My feet moved forward, step after step, closing the distance between us. The recorder on my chest captured everything. Its LED still glowing green, a small piece of human technology documenting something that should not exist. When I was within arm's reach, the figure lowered its hand and tilted its head, a gesture that was somehow universal despite coming from something utterly alien. It wanted me to follow, to come closer to the opening in the craft, to step inside. I can't, I heard myself say, my voice cracking. I can't just disappear. People will look for me. There are protocols, procedures. The figure's head tilted the other way. And then, for the first time, it communicated. Not with words, not with sound, but directly into my mind. Concepts that bypassed language entirely. Ideas that implanted themselves fully formed. You will not be harmed. You will return. Understanding is offered. Choice is yours. 4 simple statements that contained universes of implication. They were offering me something. Knowledge? Experience? A glimpse behind the curtain of reality? And they were promising I would return, though whether that meant minutes or hours or years, the communication didn't specify. I thought of Elena, watching my GPS signal on her monitor. I thought of the other officers who had experienced this and chosen to run, to hide, to pretend it had never happened. I thought of Tom Parker, who had disappeared in 1987 and never been found, and wondered if he had been given the same choice. The figure waited, patient and still. The opening in the craft remained, the golden light spilling out. And somewhere in the distance I heard the sound of an approaching vehicle. Someone else traveling Highway 50 in the dead of night, unaware of the impossible scene unfolding just around the next curve. I had seconds to decide, go with them and maybe never return, maybe end up another unsolved disappearance, or retreat to my car, to safety, to ignorance, and spend the rest of my life wondering what I might have learned. The approaching vehicle's headlights appeared on the horizon, a distant glow that was getting closer by the second. The figure gestured again, more urgently. The golden light began to pulse. I made my choice. I stepped toward the craft. The figure moved aside, allowing me access to the opening. The hum grew louder, resonating in my chest cavity, making my heart beat in rhythm with something vast and ancient. I could see the interior now, not machinery but something organic. Surfaces that curved and flowed like living tissue. My foot touched the edge of the opening and everything changed. The desert vanished. Highway 50 disappeared. The approaching vehicle's headlights blinked out of existence. I was somewhere else. Somewhere that didn't conform to 3-dimensional space, where up and down had no meaning and distance was negotiable. I saw Earth from above, not as a planet, but as a web of light and consciousness, every human mind a glowing node in a vast network. I saw highways not as roads, but as rivers of intention, paths carved by millions of individual wills, all flowing toward their own destinations. I saw time not as a line, but as a spiral, every moment existing simultaneously past and future, just different directions of movement through the same eternal now. And I saw them. Not just the three figures, but thousands, millions, an entire civilization that existed in the spaces between spaces. They were travelers, observers, scientists of a sort we had no words for. They studied consciousness the way we studied atoms, mapping the patterns of thought and choice across hundreds of worlds. Earth was just one point on their map. Humans were just one flavor of awareness among countless others. And Highway 50, that lonely stretch of asphalt cutting through the Nevada desert, was a thin place where their world and ours came close enough to touch. They showed me their purpose. Not in words, but in pure understanding. They weren't invaders or conquerors. They were documentarians recording the infinite variations of consciousness as it emerged and evolved across the universe. Every abduction, every sighting, every missing time event was another data point in a study that had been ongoing for millennia. Tom Parker hadn't disappeared. He had been invited, just as I was being invited. And he had chosen to go further, to become part of their observation team, to see the universe through eyes that weren't bound by biological limitation. He was still alive, in a sense, though the word alive barely applied to what he had become. And then they asked me, not in words, but in pure conceptual transfer, "Will you join us? Will you leave your singular existence and become part of something larger? Will you trade your limited human perspective for a glimpse of the infinite?" It was tempting, God, it was tempting, to shed the constraints of flesh and time, to see everything, understand everything, to become more than Lance Eddington, more than human, more than any single point of consciousness could ever be alone. But I thought of Elena. I thought of my sister in Reno, my buddy from the academy, the other officers who depended on me. I thought of Highway 50 and the job I'd chosen, protecting people on the loneliest road in America. Small things, human things, limited and finite and precious precisely because they wouldn't last forever. No, I said, or thought, or communicated in whatever way worked in this space between spaces. I choose to stay human, to stay limited, to stay me. The figures weren't disappointed. That would imply they had expectations, and they were beyond such things. They simply accepted my choice the way you might accept a weather report, as a fact requiring no judgment. And then I was back, standing on Highway 50 beside my patrol car, the recorder on my chest still glowing green. The craft was gone. The figures were gone. The golden light and the impossible visions were gone. Just darkness and desert and the sound of an approaching vehicle. I checked my watch, 3:15 a.m., 28 minutes since I'd stopped the car. Not hours, not days. 28 minutes during which I had traveled to somewhere else and been offered a choice that would have changed everything. The approaching vehicle rounded the curve, a semi-truck hauling freight, its headlights cutting through the darkness. The driver saw me standing there and slowed, pulling over with a wheeze of air brakes. "You okay, officer?" He called out the window, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and trucker's tan. "Saw you just standing there. Engine trouble?" "I'm fine," I said, surprised by how normal my voice sounded. "Just needed to stretch my legs. Long shift." He nodded, accepting the explanation without question, and drove on. His taillights disappeared into the darkness, and I was alone again on Highway 50, exactly where I'd started, as if nothing had happened. Except everything had happened. And I had proof. I got back in my car, the engine starting without hesitation, and drove slowly back toward Ely. The recorder was still active, still glowing green. Whatever it had captured in those 28 minutes would either validate everything I'd experienced or prove that I'd lost my mind completely. "Unit 47 to dispatch," I said into the radio. It worked perfectly now, no static, no interference. "Lance!" Elena's voice was sharp with relief. "You went dark again. 28 minutes this time, are you?" "I'm okay. I'm coming in. And Elena, I have something you need to see." The station was empty except for Elena when I arrived at 4 o'clock a.m. She met me in the equipment room, her face pale, her hands shaking as she took the recorder from me. "You saw them again," she said. Not a question. She knew. "More than saw them. I went inside. They communicated with me. They showed me." I paused, trying to find words for something that existed beyond language. Everything. They showed me everything. Elena connected the recorder to her computer and pulled up the footage. We watched in silence as the video played, the light appearing behind me, the approach, the craft materializing, the figures. And then, for those 28 minutes, static. Not empty static, but structured static, patterns within patterns, like the recorder had tried to capture something it wasn't designed to perceive and produce this fractal corruption instead. "That's not equipment failure," Elena said quietly. "That's the recorder trying to translate something that doesn't fit into conventional dimensions." She was right. Hidden in that static were shapes, patterns, fleeting images that appeared and disappeared too quickly to identify. It was proof, just not proof that anyone would accept. Anyone who watched this footage would dismiss it as a technical glitch, corrupted data, anything but what it actually was. "What did they want?" Elena asked. "Why you? Why any of us?" "They're studying consciousness," I said. "Every encounter, every abduction, every missing time event. It's all data collection for them. We're not threats or resources or even particularly interesting. We're just samples in an experiment that's been running since before humans existed." "Did they tell you why Highway 50? Why this specific stretch of road?" I shook my head. "They don't think in terms of locations. To them, space is just another variable to manipulate. Highway 50 isn't special. It's just thin. The barrier between their reality and ours is thinner here, easier to cross." Elena was quiet for a long moment, staring at the corrupted footage on her screen. "You could have stayed with them," she said finally. "Couldn't you? They offered you that choice. How did you know?" "Because they offered it to me too, 12 years ago. And I said no, same as you." She turned to look at me, and in her eyes I saw a lifetime of wondering what might have been. "Do you regret it?" I thought about the offer. To become more than human, to see the universe as they saw it, to transcend every limitation that bound me to this singular existence. It would have been extraordinary. It would have been everything. But it wouldn't have been mine. "No," I said. "I don't regret it." She nodded, a small smile touching her lips. "Neither do I, most days." We stayed in that equipment room until dawn, watching the corrupted footage over and over, looking for patterns, for meaning, for some scrap of concrete evidence that would make the impossible provable. We found none. Just static and shadows and the faintest suggestion of something vast and incomprehensible operating just outside the bounds of human perception. "What do we do with this?" I asked, as the sun began to rise, painting the office windows in shades of orange and gold. Elena ejected the storage card from her computer and locked it in her desk drawer, in a section marked Personal Files. "Same thing we do with everything else," she said. "We document it, we remember it, and we keep watching the sky. That's it? We just continue? What else is there? We can't prove it. We can't control it. We can't even really understand it. All we can do is acknowledge it and try to live with the knowledge that we're not alone, we've never been alone. And everything we think we know about reality is just the tiny slice we're capable of perceiving." She was right, of course. There was nothing else to do. No protocol for this, no procedure, no chain of command that led to someone who could make sense of it. We were on our own. A handful of witnesses scattered across time and space, all of us chosen for reasons we couldn't fathom. All of us carrying secrets too big to share and too real to deny. I went home as the morning shift officers arrived, driving past Highway 50 without turning, taking the long way through town. I needed normal roads, normal traffic, normal people going about their normal lives. I needed to remember what it felt like to be simply human, limited and finite, and beautifully unaware of the vast machinery of consciousness that turned in the spaces between stars. But I knew I would go back. Maybe not tonight, maybe not next week, but eventually I would return to Highway 50, to that long, empty stretch where the barriers thin and the impossible becomes routine. Because now I understood what Elena had meant when she said we don't go back to normal. We just get better at pretending. And because somewhere out there, in dimensions I couldn't perceive and spaces I couldn't navigate, they were still watching, still studying, still collecting their data on the infinite variations of awareness as it flickered briefly into existence and then faded back into the dark. We were part of something larger than ourselves, larger than Earth, larger than humanity, larger than the entire concept of biology as we understood it. And whether that was terrifying or comforting depended entirely on which moment you asked me. Most moments, it was both. The first rule of night patrol on US 95 is simple. Trust your instincts. The second rule is even simpler. When something feels wrong, it probably is. I'm Mason Harrow, Nevada Highway Patrol, 12 years on the force, the last 8 assigned to the northern corridor between Fallon and McDermott. It's a long, lonely stretch of highway that cuts through some of the emptiest desert in America. Most nights you might see a dozen vehicles over an 8-hour shift. Some nights, you see none at all. This was one of those nights. October 17th, 11:47 p.m. Temperature outside was dropping fast, down to 43 degrees according to my dashboard. Clear sky, no moon, just stars so bright they looked close enough to touch. I'd been driving north for the past hour, mile marker 104 just passing on my right, nothing but sagebrush and darkness stretching to the horizon in every direction. My radio crackled with the usual late-night chatter. A trucker reporting a deer crossing near Winnemucca. County dispatch asking about road conditions near the Idaho border. Normal stuff. Comforting in its mundanity. I was thinking about coffee. Specifically, whether I should stop at the 24-hour truck stop in McDermott or wait until my shift ended at 6 a.m. Trivial thoughts. Safe thoughts. The kind of mental white noise that keeps you alert during the dead hours when nothing happens and the highway hypnotizes you with its sameness. That's when I saw the flash. Not ahead of me, but above. A brilliant strobe of white light that lit up the entire sky for maybe half a second, bright enough that I instinctively hit the brakes. My first thought was lightning, but the sky was clear. No clouds, no storm front, nothing that would produce a flash like that. The light faded, leaving after images dancing across my vision. I blinked hard, trying to clear my sight, and that's when I noticed something else, The radio had gone silent. Not static, just nothing. Dead air. The digital display was still lit, showing the correct frequency, but no sound came through. "Dispatch, this is Unit 31, I said, reaching for the handset. "Did anyone else see that flash? Over." Nothing, not even static. I was still processing this when I saw it in my rearview mirror. A light, bright and white, maybe a quarter-mile back. At first glance, it looked like headlights, but something was off. The light was too bright, too steady, and it seemed to be coming from above the road surface rather than from a vehicle. My pulse kicked up a notch. 12 years of experience told me this wasn't normal, but 12 years of training said to investigate anyway. I eased off the gas, dropping from 65 to 55, giving whoever was behind me a chance to pass. They didn't pass. The light maintained its distance exactly, neither closing nor falling back. I accelerated to 70. The light matched me perfectly. Dropped to 45. Still there, same distance. "Okay," I muttered to myself. "What the hell are you?" I reached for my spotlight, the powerful handheld unit we use for illuminating dark areas during traffic stops. Pointed it behind me through the rear window and flipped it on. The beam cut through the darkness, and for a moment I saw nothing, just road. The light that had been following me was gone, vanished like it had never existed. But my spotlight beam looked wrong, like it was bending or diffusing in ways it shouldn't. The air behind my car seemed to shimmer, like heat waves rising from summer asphalt, except it was October and cold. I killed the spotlight. The shimmer disappeared too. What? My engine died, not sputtered, not coughed, not gave any warning at all. Just stopped. Instantly, complete. The power steering went rigid under my hands. The instrument panel lights flickered once and went dark. Even my headlights cut out, plunging me into absolute darkness as my patrol car rolled forward on momentum alone. Muscle memory kicked in. I guided the dead car to the shoulder, fighting the stiff steering wheel, bringing it to a stop on the gravel. My heart was hammering now, adrenaline flooding my system. In 12 years of patrol work, I'd had flat tires, mechanical problems, even a transmission failure once. But I'd never had a complete electrical shutdown like this. Every system, dead all at once. I sat there in the darkness, breathing hard, listening to the silence. No engine hum, no radio crackle, not even the subtle electronic whine that modern cars make when the ignition is on. Just silence and the faint sound of my own breathing. And then I heard it. A low hum, barely perceptible at first, vibrating through the car's frame. It wasn't mechanical. It was something else, something outside, growing louder. The kind of sound you feel in your chest more than hear with your ears. I reached for my flashlight, the heavy mag light I keep on my belt, clicked it on. The beam was weak, the battery somehow drained despite being fresh at the start of my shift. But it gave enough light to see the interior of my car, the dead instruments, the useless radio. And through the windshield I saw the light return. It wasn't behind me anymore. It was directly ahead, hovering maybe 30 feet above the highway, perhaps 100 yards distant. A sphere of pure white light, perfectly round, about the size of a small car. It hung there, motionless, silent except for that deep humming that made my teeth ache. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to get out of the car and sprint into the desert. But I'm a highway patrol officer. Running isn't protocol. Instead, I grabbed my radio handset, knowing it was dead, but trying anyway. "This is Unit 31. I have an emergency situation on US 95, mile marker 104. All systems are down. I have visual contact with an unidentified. The light pulsed. One bright flash, and I felt something pass through me. Not physically, but like a wave of pressure, a change in the air itself. The sensation was impossible to describe. It didn't hurt, but it felt intrusive, like being scanned, examined, measured. And then my engine started, all by itself. No key turn, no ignition sequence, just sudden, instant life. The engine roared. The instrument panel lit up. The headlights blazed back to brightness. My radio burst into static so loud I jerked the handset away from my ear. The sphere of light shot straight up into the sky. Not gradually, not with any sense of acceleration. It was just gone, moving from stationary to impossible velocity in an instant, leaving a brief streak of white against the stars before disappearing completely. I sat there, engine running, hands shaking, trying to process what had just happened. The radio static resolved into voices, dispatch calling my unit number repeatedly, sounding frantic. 31, respond. Unit 31, what is your status? We lost all telemetry. I'm here, I managed to say, my voice hoarse. I'm okay. I had a complete electrical failure, but systems are back online now. Mason, you disappeared from GPS for 4 minutes. We were about to send county backup. What happened? 4 minutes. I checked my dashboard clock. 11:53 p.m. But that couldn't be right. The flash had happened at 11:47. I'd seen it right after passing mile marker 104. Even accounting for the dead car rolling to a stop, the engine dying, the light appearing, all of it couldn't have been more than a minute, maybe 90 seconds at most. I'm not sure, I said carefully. Possible equipment malfunction. I'm going to continue patrol and monitor systems. Copy that. Run a full diagnostic when you get back to station. We don't need another electrical fire situation. Will do. I put the car in drive, my hands still trembling slightly on the wheel. The engine sounded normal, the instruments read normal, but nothing felt normal. I'd lost 3 minutes somewhere, 3 minutes that I couldn't account for, during which my car had been dead, and I'd been staring at an impossible light. I was about to pull back onto the highway when I saw the other vehicle. It was parked about 50 yards ahead of me, pulled onto the shoulder just like I was. A pickup truck, newer model Ford F-250, with Nevada Department of Transportation markings. As I watched, the driver's door opened and someone got out, moving slowly, carefully, like they weren't sure their legs would hold them. I turned on my light bar and pulled up behind the truck. Through my headlights, I could see the figure more clearly. Male, probably mid-30s, wearing the standard NDOT uniform with reflective strips. He turned to look at my approaching car, and even from this distance I could see the confusion on his face. I got out of my patrol car, one hand instinctively resting near my weapon, though I didn't feel threatened, just cautious. "Sir, are you all right?" I called out. "Having vehicle trouble?" He stared at me for a long moment, then at his truck, then back at me. "Did you see it?" His voice was rough, strained. "The light? Did you see the light?" My blood ran cold. What light? The one that was just here, the one that... He gestured at his truck. My engine died, complete shutdown, and there was this light, this sphere, hovering right over the road. I thought I was losing my mind, but if you're here, if you saw it too... "I saw it," I said quietly. Admitting it out loud made it more real, more terrifying. "What's your name?" "Reed Garrison, road maintenance crew. I was heading back from a sign repair up near McDermott." He looked at his truck again, then pulled open the driver's door and checked something inside. "This doesn't make any sense. My truck died, total electrical failure. But look," he pointed at his dashboard. I moved closer to see. The truck was running now, engine idling normally. But what he was showing me was the battery gauge. It read exactly where it should be, showing a full charge. If I'd had a complete electrical failure, Reed said, the battery should be drained. Should barely have enough juice to crank the engine. But it's full, like nothing happened. Like the electricity didn't fail, it just stopped. And then started again. I thought about my own car, how it had gone from completely dead to running perfectly in an instant. No gradual power return, no systems coming back online one by one. Just off, then on, like someone had flipped a cosmic switch. "What time do you have?" I asked suddenly. Reed checked his watch, an old analog piece with a scratched face. 11:53, why? "What time did your engine die?" "I don't know exactly. Maybe 11:48? I saw a flash in the sky, then everything went dark." The same timeline as mine. The same flash, the same shutdown, the same restart. And according to both our clocks, we'd lost time we couldn't account for. "Check your watch again," I said, pulling out my phone. It showed 11:54 p.m. But something about the digits bothered me. I'd checked my phone earlier in my patrol car, during that long, boring hour before anything strange started happening. It had shown 11:43 then, I was sure of it. And I remembered thinking I had 6 hours and 17 minutes left in my shift. Reed looked at his watch, then frowned. He tapped the crystal face. "That's weird." "What?" "My watch. It's an old mechanical one, my grandfather's. I wound it this morning and it's been keeping perfect time. But now..." He held it up to show me. The second hand was moving, ticking normally. But something about the position of the hour and minute hands seemed off. I pulled out my phone again and checked the time, 11:54. "What time did you start your shift?" I asked. 6 p.m., finished the sign work around 11:30, started heading back. "So when you saw the flash, you thought it was around 11:48? "Yeah, maybe 11:49. Definitely before 11:50 because I remember thinking I'd be back at the station before midnight if I didn't hit any delays. I did the math in my head. If the flash happened at 11:47 or 11:48, and our clocks now showed 11:54, that meant 6 or 7 minutes had passed. But dispatch had said I'd been dark for 4 minutes. Something didn't add up, unless the clocks were wrong. "Reed," I said slowly, "do you have any other timepieces? Anything that keeps independent time?" He thought for a moment, then reached into his truck and pulled out a digital watch from the cup holder. "This. It's a backup I keep for logging work hours." He pressed the button to light up the display. It read 11:48 p.m. We both stared at it. Then at my phone, which still showed 11:54. Then at Reed's analog watch, which showed the same. "That's impossible," Reed said. "This watch, it's atomic. Syncs with the official time signal every night. It doesn't just lose 6 minutes." But it had. Or rather, the other clocks had gained 6 minutes. Or time itself had fractured somehow, creating a gap we'd fallen through without realizing it. I was about to say something when my radio erupted with noise. Not static this time, but voices. Overlapping, urgent. "All units, we have multiple reports of atmospheric disturbance. Citizen reporting unusual lights near mile marker 98. County Emergency Services requesting confirmation." I grabbed the handset. "Dispatch, this is Unit 31. I'm at mile marker 104 with an NDOT vehicle. We both experienced electrical failures approximately 6 minutes ago. Can you confirm current time?" A pause, then, "Unit 31, current time is 11:55 p.m. "What do you mean you experienced failures 6 minutes ago?" "You went dark at 11:51 and came back online at 11:53. "That's 2 minutes, Mason, not 6. Reed and I exchanged looks. From dispatch's perspective, we'd been gone for 2 minutes. From the atomic watch's perspective, current time was 6 minutes earlier than what every other clock said. And from our perspective, we'd only experienced what felt like a minute or two of engine failure and strange lights. Dispatch, I said carefully. I need you to log this call. Officer Mason Harrow, Unit 31, mile marker 104 US 95. I am reporting a time discrepancy. My vehicle systems and personal devices show 11:55 p.m., but an atomic timepiece shows 11:49. I am also reporting visual contact with an unidentified aerial phenomenon that caused complete electrical failure in both my patrol vehicle and an NDOT truck. Another pause, longer this time. When the dispatcher spoke again, her voice was different, more formal. Unit 31, please stand by for supervisor. Reed looked at me, his face pale in the glow of my headlights. What the hell is going on? I don't know, I said honestly. But something happened to us, something that affected time itself, or our perception of it, or... I trailed off. There were no words for what I was trying to describe. No framework in my training for how to report an impossible event that left physical evidence of its impossibility. A new voice came over the radio. Sergeant Mendez, my shift supervisor. Mason, what exactly are you reporting? I took a breath and told him everything. The flash in the sky, the electrical failure, the hovering sphere of light, the time discrepancy. I kept my voice steady, clinical, reporting facts without interpretation. When I finished, there was a long silence. Stay where you are, Mendez finally said. I'm sending a unit to your location. Do not approach any further anomalies. If you see anything else unusual, document it, but maintain distance. Understood? Understood. And Mason, get that NDOT driver's statement. If this is really happening, we need multiple witnesses. The radio went quiet. Reed looked at me, and I could see my own confusion and fear reflected in his face. We were both trained professionals, both accustomed to dealing with emergencies and unusual situations. But this was beyond unusual. This was impossible. And yet, it had happened. Come on, I said. Let's check our vehicles more thoroughly. See if anything else is off. We spent the next 15 minutes going over every system we could think of. My patrol car seemed fine. Engine running smoothly, all lights functional, radio working, instruments reading normal. Reed's truck was the same. Everything operational. Battery fully charged despite having supposedly lost all power. But there were small anomalies. My dashboard clock was now showing 12:01 a.m., but when I checked my phone, it showed 12:07. The 6-minute gap was consistent. Reed's analog watch matched my phone, but his digital watch, the atomic one, still showed a time 6 minutes earlier. It's like we jumped forward, Reed said, staring at his two watches. Or everything else did. 6 minutes just appeared out of nowhere, but some things remember the old timeline and some things remember the new one. That's impossible. So is a light that kills engines and then restarts them. He had a point. We were still puzzling over this when headlights appeared in the distance, approaching from the south. As they got closer, I could see it was another highway patrol unit. It pulled up beside us, and Officer Sanchez got out, her expression carefully neutral. Mendez sent me, she said. Said you two had a situation. I briefed her on everything while Reed nodded confirmation at the appropriate points. Sanchez listened without interrupting, her cop face firmly in place. But I could see the skepticism in her eyes, the subtle way she was assessing whether I might be having some kind of breakdown. Show me the watches, she said when I finished. Reed held up both of his. Sanchez checked her own watch, showing 12:09, then looked at Reed's atomic watch, showing 12:03. She frowned, pulled out her phone, confirmed that it matched her watch, then looked at the atomic watch again. This thing broken? She asked. It was working fine all night, Reed said. It's atomic. It synchronizes with the official U.S. time signal. It doesn't just lose time. Sanchez tried her radio. "Dispatch, can you confirm current time?" 12:09 a.m. She looked at the atomic watch again, watching the seconds tick by. For every second that passed on her own watch, the atomic watch ticked 1 second as well. It wasn't running slow. It was just 6 minutes behind, consistently, impossibly. "I'm going to need to take that with me," Sanchez said. "Evidence." Reed hesitated, then handed it over. "You going to tell me I'm crazy?" he asked. "I don't think you're crazy," Sanchez said slowly. "I think something happened here that we don't understand. Whether it's some kind of electrical phenomenon, atmospheric anomaly, or—" She paused, clearly not wanting to say the next part out loud. "Or something else entirely." "Something else meaning what?" I pressed. She looked at me, and in that moment, her cop face slipped. What I saw underneath was uncertainty and something that might have been fear. "Mason, you know what highway patrol logs from this region look like. You know how many unexplained reports we get from US 95, from Highway 50, from all these empty stretches of desert. Lights that don't behave like aircraft, radar anomalies, GPS glitches. Most of it gets filed away with a note about equipment malfunction or atmospheric conditions. But sometimes the equipment checks out fine, sometimes the conditions are clear, and sometimes officers report things that don't make sense. Time gaps, electrical failures, and when multiple witnesses report the same impossible thing." She trailed off, handing the atomic watch back to Reed. "Keep it. It's your property. But I'm going to need you both to come to the station and give formal statements." We followed Sanchez south on US 95, her patrol car leading, Reed's truck behind her, my unit bringing up the rear. The highway was empty. No other traffic. Just 3 vehicles moving through the desert darkness. I kept checking my mirrors, half expecting to see that white sphere return. But the sky remained clear, stars bright, nothing out of place. Nothing except the 6 minutes that shouldn't exist, and the atomic watch that insisted they didn't. At mile marker 98, where dispatch had reported citizen sightings of unusual lights, we slowed down. I scanned the area carefully with my spotlight but saw nothing unusual, just desert, sage, and darkness stretching to infinity. But as we passed, I noticed something. A slight shimmer in the air, almost invisible, like heat distortion. It was there for just a moment, then gone. I wasn't even sure I'd really seen it. But my hands tightened on the wheel, and I found myself checking my dashboard clock compulsively. 12:23 a.m. it read. In my pocket, my phone also said 12:23, but somewhere in the universe there was a watch that disagreed, insisting it was only 12:17. And somewhere in my memory was a gap, 3 or 4 minutes I couldn't account for, during which my car had been dead and an impossible light had examined me like a specimen under glass. The station lights appeared ahead, familiar and comforting. Normal, safe. But as I pulled into the parking lot, I couldn't shake the feeling that normal was now a relative concept. That safe was an illusion we told ourselves to get through the night. And that somewhere above us, in the vast darkness between stars, something was watching US 95 with patient, incomprehensible interest. We had 6 minutes that shouldn't exist to prove it. The Fallon Highway Patrol Station is a modest building that's seen better decades, but it's never looked as welcoming as it did that night. Fluorescent lights blazed through the windows, painting geometric patterns across the parking lot. Inside, I could see other officers moving around, dealing with their own mundane emergencies. Drunk drivers, traffic accidents, domestic disputes. Normal problems with normal solutions. I wished my problem was normal. Sergeant Mendez met us at the entrance, his face unreadable. He's 52, been with Nevada Highway Patrol for 26 years, and I've never seen anything rattle him. But tonight, there was something different in his eyes, not fear exactly, more like a wary alertness. The look of a man who's been down this road before and didn't enjoy the trip. "Conference room," he said, without preamble. "All three of you. Sanchez, get the timeline board set up. I want everything documented." The conference room smelled like burnt coffee and dry erase markers. Mendez closed the door behind us, which was unusual. Normally, everything at the station operates with an open-door policy, transparency and all that. Closed doors mean serious business. "Before we start," Mendez said, pulling out a small device I recognized as a digital recorder, "I want to be clear about something. What you're about to tell me goes into an official report, but it also goes into a separate file. A file that doesn't get shared with the public, doesn't get requested under Freedom of Information, and doesn't get talked about outside this room. Understood?" The three of us nodded. Reed looked confused, but I was starting to understand. There was a protocol for this, an established procedure for reports that fell outside normal parameters. I'd heard rumors about it from older officers, whispered stories about the weird file, but I'd always thought it was just station folklore. Apparently not. "All right," Mendez said, pressing record. "Officer Mason Harrow, badge number 2847, and civilian witness Reed Garrison, NDOT employee ID." He looked at Reed. 874429, Reed supplied. "Let's start from the beginning. Mason, take me through your entire patrol route, starting from when you left the station at 10 p.m. I did, recounting everything in precise detail. The boring hour of normal patrol, the flash in the sky, the radio dying, the sphere of light, the engine failure, the restart, the missing time. As I talked, Sanchez drew a timeline on the whiteboard, marking each event with its supposed timestamp, highlighting the discrepancies. When I finished, Mendez turned to Reed. "Your count, please. Everything from the start of your shift." Reed's story matched mine almost exactly, allowing for the fact that he'd been several miles north of my position when it started. The same flash, the same electrical failure, the same hovering sphere, though from his description, he'd seen it from a different angle. The same impossible restart, and most importantly, the same time anomaly. "Show me the watch," Mendez said when Reed finished. Reed pulled out the atomic watch and set it on the table. We all looked at it. The time displayed was 12:48 a.m. Mendez checked his own watch, 12:54 a.m. He pulled out his phone, which matched his watch. Then he picked up the atomic watch and examined it closely. "This model," he said slowly. "I had one just like it. My son gave it to me for my birthday. They're accurate to within a tenth of a second because they synchronize with the atomic clock in Colorado every night at 2 a.m. If this watch says it's 12:48, then according to the official U.S. time standard, it's 12:48. But every other clock says it's 12:54, I pointed out. Exactly. Mendez set the watch down carefully, like it might explode. Which means either this watch stopped synchronizing and then started again with a 6-minute error, or, Reed prompted. Or something happened that caused a 6-minute discrepancy between two clocks that should be showing identical times, and the only way that's possible is if time itself became negotiable for a brief period. The room fell silent. Even Sanchez, who'd been methodically documenting everything on the whiteboard, stopped moving. We were all confronting the same impossible implication. That time, the one constant we all rely on, had somehow split or jumped or fractured, leaving us with proof that it had happened but no explanation for how or why. "There's something else," Mendez said, opening a laptop he'd brought into the room. "While you three were driving back here, I pulled the GPS logs from Mason's patrol car and compared them to dispatch records." He turned the screen so we could see. It showed a map of US 95 with a blue line representing my patrol route. The line was smooth and continuous until it reached mile marker 104, where it suddenly broke. There was a gap, no data at all, followed by the line resuming in what appeared to be exactly the same spot. The gap, Mendez said, lasted from 11:51:17 to 11:53:42, 2 minutes and 25 seconds during which your GPS transponder transmitted nothing. As far as our system was concerned, your vehicle didn't exist. "But I lost more time than that," I said. "At least 4 minutes, maybe more." "Correct. Which suggests the gap in GPS coverage is only part of what happened. Something caused your vehicle to disappear from our tracking system, but something else caused a temporal discrepancy that the GPS couldn't capture." He pulled up another screen showing what looked like radio transmission logs. "Here's where it gets interesting. During the period when your vehicle wasn't transmitting GPS, we also lost all radio contact with you. But if you look at this," he highlighted a section of the log. "There's a burst of signal here at 11:52:01 that lasted exactly 0.3 seconds. Too brief for the dispatcher to hear anything, but it was there. The computer logged it as a transmission from your unit, but the audio was corrupted, just white noise." "I didn't transmit anything at 11:52, I said. "My radio was completely dead." "I know. But something using your radio's frequency and transponder ID transmitted a burst of noise, like your equipment was trying to communicate but couldn't form coherent signals." Sanchez stepped closer to look at the screen. "What about Reed's truck? NDOT vehicles have GPS tracking too, right?" Reed nodded. "Yeah, we all have fleet tracking. They monitor our location and vehicle status in real time." "Can you access those logs?" Mendez asked. Reed pulled out his phone and logged into the NDOT fleet management system. A few taps later, his face went pale. "This can't be right." He turned his phone so we could see. The tracking screen showed his truck's route for the evening, a red line running north on US 95, then turning around and heading back south. But at mile marker 109, several miles north of where he said his engine had failed, there was a gap. No data from 11:50:44 to 11:53:16. 2 minutes and 32 seconds. "I wasn't at mile marker 109, Reed said. "I was at 107, maybe 108 at most when it happened." Mendez made a note. 2 GPS systems, 2 vehicles, 2 separate locations, all showing disappearances at roughly the same time. And both systems came back online after about 2.5 minutes, but the operators report experiencing a longer period of time, and we have a watch that suggests current time is 6 minutes behind where it should be. He sat back, rubbing his eyes. "I'm going to be honest with you all. This isn't the first time we've seen something like this. Not the exact same circumstances, but similar. Unexplained lights, electrical failures, time anomalies. It happens out here more than people realize." "How much more?" I asked. "Enough that there's a protocol." He gestured at the closed door. "Enough that we have procedures for documenting and filing these reports in a way that doesn't trigger public panic or media attention. Enough that when I was briefed about this protocol 8 years ago, I was shown a file containing 43 separate incidents dating back to 1952. 43? Sanchez sounded shocked. "In Nevada alone?" "In the northern Nevada patrol sectors alone. There are similar files for other regions, other states, anywhere you have long, empty highways through isolated areas. They attract attention." "From what?" Reed asked. "I mean, are we talking about some kind of atmospheric phenomenon?" Secret military testing, or he hesitated, clearly not wanting to say it. I don't know, Mendez said flatly. The file doesn't speculate, it just documents. Lights that behave in ways aircraft can't. Electrical systems failing and restarting without cause. Time discrepancies. Radar anomalies. GPS blackouts. Missing minutes, sometimes hours. And occasionally, very occasionally, officers or civilians who see things that... He paused. Things that don't fit any conventional explanation. Like a hovering sphere of light, I said quietly. Like a hovering sphere of light, he agreed. Which brings us to the next step. I need detailed statements from both of you. Everything you remember, no matter how strange or impossible it seems. Sanchez, I need you to go back to mile marker 104 with the equipment van. Do a full site survey. Magnetic readings, radiation levels, soil samples, the works. If something happened out there that could cause these effects, maybe we can find physical evidence. And if we don't, Sanchez asked, then we file it alongside the other 43 incidents and hope someone smarter than us can eventually figure it out. Over the next 2 hours, Reed and I gave detailed statements, answering every question Mendez could think of. What exactly did the light look like? How did it move? What sounds did we hear? Did we feel any physical sensations? What about smells, tastes, anything unusual? The process was exhausting, forcing me to relive every moment of an experience my brain was already trying to rationalize away. But Mendez was thorough, and the digital recorder captured every word. One more thing, Mendez said as we were finishing up. Did either of you experience any time distortion before the electrical failure? Any feeling of time moving slower or faster? Any sense of déjà vu? Anything like that? I thought about it. No, everything seemed normal until the flash. Same, Reed confirmed. Normal night, normal drive, then suddenly everything went crazy. Mendez made a note, then shut off the recorder. All right, Reed, you're free to go. We'll be in touch if we need any follow-up information. Mason, you're off duty as of now. Go home, get some rest. I'll need you back here tomorrow afternoon to review Sanchez's site survey results. What about my shift? I asked. Covered. Consider this administrative leave pending investigation into equipment malfunction. He gave me a meaningful look. Official story is your patrol car had electrical problems. Nothing about lights or time anomalies. Understood? Understood. Reed and I left the conference room together. The station seemed too bright now, too normal. Officers were typing reports, answering phones, doing the mundane work of law enforcement. None of them knew that upstairs, in a closed room, their sergeant was filing a report about something that shouldn't exist. You believe it, don't you? Reed asked as we walked to the parking lot. What we saw, what happened. You don't think we imagined it? I saw my car die completely and then start itself, I said. I saw a light that didn't behave like anything natural, and I have a watch that insists we're living in the wrong time. So, yeah, I believe it. The question is, what do I do about that belief? Reed was quiet for a moment, looking up at the sky. It was still clear, stars bright. The Milky Way, a ghostly river overhead. Beautiful and vast, and suddenly ominous. My grandfather used to say that the desert keeps secrets. He was Paiute, grew up on the reservation near Pyramid Lake. He had stories about lights in the desert, things that came down from the sky. I always thought they were just stories. And now? Now, I think maybe the desert's been keeping the same secrets for a very long time. He pulled out his keys. Drive safe, Officer Harrow. And if you see any more lights that don't make sense, maybe just keep driving. That's the plan, I said. though we both knew it was a lie. If those lights appeared again, I wouldn't keep driving. I'd stop, I'd investigate, because that's what I do. It's who I am, even if it might cost me another 6 minutes I can't account for. I drove home in my personal vehicle, a 10-year-old Tacoma that started normally and ran without issue. The streets of Fallon were quiet at 2:30 a.m., just a few late-night diners and one lonely gas station still lit up. Everything was ordinary, familiar, safe. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was seeing it all through different eyes now. That flash in the sky, that sphere of light, those missing minutes, they'd changed something fundamental in how I perceived reality. The world looked the same, but I now knew it wasn't. Beneath the surface of normalcy, there were cracks, thin places where something else could reach through. And US 95, that long empty highway through the desert, was one of those thin places. At home, I checked every clock. My wall clock showed 2:47 a.m. My phone showed 2:47. My laptop showed 2:47, all synchronized, all agreeing on what time it was. But in my pocket, I still had a screenshot of Reed's atomic watch from earlier, showing a time 6 minutes behind. 6 minutes that had appeared out of nowhere. Or perhaps 6 minutes that had always existed in parallel, invisible to us until something made them briefly visible. Time, I was learning, was more flexible than I'd ever imagined. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes I saw that sphere of light, perfectly round, perfectly white, hovering with impossible stillness, and I felt again that sensation of being scanned, examined, measured by an intelligence I couldn't comprehend. What had it wanted? Why had it stopped our engines? And why, when it left, had it left behind this temporal scar, this proof that something impossible had happened? I didn't have answers. But lying there in the darkness of my bedroom, listening to the distant sound of traffic on the highway, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. This wasn't over. Whatever had happened on US 95 tonight was just the beginning. The light would return. Others would see it. And eventually, someone would have to acknowledge that we weren't alone, had never been alone, and that the empty stretches of Nevada highway were anything but empty. They were highways of a different kind. Roads that connected Earth to somewhere else. And tonight, something from that somewhere else had stopped to take a look at us. I wondered if it liked what it saw. I woke up at 11:47 a.m., and the significance of the time didn't escape me. Exactly 12 hours after the flash had appeared in my rearview mirror. Exactly 12 hours after time itself had fractured, leaving behind 6 minutes that shouldn't exist. My phone showed 6 missed calls from Mendez. 2 text messages. Site survey complete. Results problematic. Come in when you wake. And bring Reed if possible. He needs to see this. I called Reed while making coffee. He answered on the first ring, sounding as tired as I felt. "Tell me you slept," he said. "About 4 hours. You?" "Maybe 3. I kept waking up feeling like I was missing something, like there was supposed to be more time, more hours, but someone had skipped them." I knew exactly what he meant. Mendez wants us at the station. Says the site survey showed something problematic. Problematic how? He didn't specify. Can you get away from work? Already called in. Told them I needed a personal day. My supervisor wasn't happy, but when I mentioned I'd been involved in an incident with the highway patrol, he backed off. Reed paused. "Mason, are we going to talk about the real issue here? Which is that we lost 6 minutes last night that we'll never get back. That something reached down from the sky and just took them, and nobody seems to think that's worth panicking about." I poured coffee with a shaking hand. People are trained to rationalize the impossible. Even us. Especially us. We're supposed to be the ones with answers, the authority figures who keep everything under control. Admitting something happened that we can't explain, can't categorize, can't defend against, that breaks the social contract. So what do? We look at Mendez's evidence. We document everything. And we try to understand what happened, even if understanding doesn't make us feel any safer. We agreed to meet at the station at 1:00 p.m. I spent the intervening hour doing something I'd never done before. I searched online for other reports of similar incidents. Nevada highway lights. US 95 unexplained phenomenon. Time loss desert highway. What I found was unsettling, not because there was too much information, but because there was too little that was credible. Plenty of conspiracy websites, UFO enthusiast forums, and wild speculation, but very few first-hand accounts from reliable witnesses, and almost nothing from law enforcement personnel. Either incidents like ours were incredibly rare, or they were being systematically suppressed. Given what Mendez had said about the 43 reports in his special file, I suspected the latter. At 12:45, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Officer Harrow, this is Patricia Drummond, Bureau of Land Management. Sergeant Mendez gave me your number. I understand you experienced an incident on US 95 last night. I'd like to speak with you about it. This is important. Please call me. I stared at the message. The Bureau of Land Management oversees vast stretches of Nevada desert, including the land around US 95. But why would they be interested in a UFO sighting? Unless this was part of the protocol Mendez had mentioned. The official response system for incidents that fell outside normal parameters. I screenshot the message but didn't call back. Not yet. I wanted to see what Mendez had found first. The conference room was crowded when Reed and I arrived. Mendez was there, along with Sanchez and two people I didn't recognize. The woman was mid-40s, professional attire, carrying herself with the confidence of someone who's used to being in charge. The man was younger, maybe 30, wearing BLM Ranger uniform. Mason, Reed, thank you for coming, Mendez said. This is Patricia Drummond from BLM and Ranger Thomas Kerrigan. They're here because of what Sanchez found at the site. Drummond offered her hand. Her grip was firm, her gaze direct. Officer Harrow, Mr. Garrison, thank you for agreeing to speak with us. I know you've had a difficult night. You could say that, Reed muttered. I sent you a text earlier, Drummond continued, addressing me. I apologize for being cryptic, but this is a sensitive matter. Sergeant Mendez has briefed me on your incident. What I'm about to show you is not public information, and I'll need both of you to sign non-disclosure agreements before we continue. Are you willing to do that? Reed and I exchanged glances. What exactly are we agreeing not to disclose? I asked. Information relating to ongoing federal investigation into anomalous phenomena occurring on public lands in Nevada, Drummond said. Specifically, phenomena that may have national security implications. The word security hung in the air. This was bigger than I'd thought. Bigger than local law enforcement protocols and special files. This was federal jurisdiction, which meant someone in Washington was paying attention to lights in the Nevada desert. We'll sign, Reed said before I could respond. I want to know what the hell happened to us last night. Drummond produced 2 documents from her briefcase. Standard NDAs, legal language about classified information and penalties for disclosure. I read through mine carefully, noting that the scope was limited to information provided during this briefing, and that it didn't prevent me from discussing my own personal experience. I signed. Reed did the same. Good, Drummond said, collecting the papers. Now, Ranger Kerrigan will walk us through what was found at the site this morning. Kerrigan opened his laptop and pulled up what looked like a satellite map. At approximately 3 o'clock a.m., Officer Sanchez and I conducted a detailed survey of the area around mile marker 104 on US 95, where Officer Harrow's vehicle experienced electrical failure. We used standard equipment: magnetometer, radiation detector, GPS with sub-meter accuracy, infrared cameras, and ground-penetrating radar. He clicked through several images. They showed the shoulder of the highway where I'd pulled over, clearly visible in the daylight photos. Normal desert landscape, sagebrush and dust and rock. Initial readings were all normal, Kerrigan continued. Background radiation levels consistent with the region. No unusual magnetic signatures, but when we used the ground-penetrating radar on the road surface itself, we found this. The next image made everyone in the room go silent. It showed a subsurface map of the highway, with a clear circular anomaly directly in the center of the road. The circle was perfectly round, approximately 15 meters in diameter, and the radar signature suggested nothing. A void. A spot where the ground-penetrating radar simply couldn't read what was beneath the surface. The radar uses electromagnetic waves to image subsurface structures, Kerrigan explained. It can penetrate several meters down, showing us road composition, underlying soil, rocks, voids. But in this circle, the signal just stops. Like there's something there that's absorbing or reflecting the radar waves in a way that produces no interpretable data. What could cause that? I asked. Under normal circumstances, very little. Certain metallic compounds might interfere with the signal, but the composition would have to be very specific, and we're not talking about a natural formation here. This is a perfect circle. Nature doesn't do perfect circles. He pulled up another image. This is the area around mile marker 107, where Reed's truck stopped. Another circle, same diameter, same radar-absorbing properties, same impossible perfection. 2 locations, Drummond said, approximately 3 miles apart, where vehicles experienced simultaneous electrical failure and their operators witnessed unidentified lights. At both locations, we find identical circular anomalies that shouldn't exist. The question is, what are we looking at? Ground markings, Mendez said. Landing sites? Possibly. But if so, they're unlike any landing site we've previously documented. There's no physical impression, no burned earth, no radiation signature, no chemical residue. Just this void in the radar data. Sanchez spoke up. I took soil samples from inside and outside the circle at both locations. The lab is running analysis now, but preliminary findings show no difference. Same composition, same mineral content. Whatever left these marks didn't physically alter the ground. Then what did it alter? Reed asked. Kerrigan pulled up a new screen. This is where it gets weird. I used differential GPS to map both circles with extreme precision, accurate to within 2 centimeters. When I overlaid the data, he superimposed both circles on a single map. They're not just the same diameter, they're identical. The exact same size, down to the millimeter. And when I calculated the distance between their centers, he paused. It's 4.227 kilometers. Exactly. So? Reed said. So, natural phenomena don't produce measurements that precise. A lightning strike creates a circular pattern, but each one is slightly different. Rock formations erode irregularly. Even man-made structures have variation, but these circles are identical, and they're separated by a distance measured to the meter. That suggests intentionality, planning, purpose. The room digested this in silence. The implications were clear. Whatever had stopped our engines had done so deliberately, had left marks in specific locations a specific distance apart, and had done so without leaving any conventional evidence of its presence. It was a signature, a calling card, proof that someone, or something, had been here. Drummond closed the laptop. Gentlemen, what I'm about to tell you is classified, but given that you're directly involved in an active incident, you have clearance to know. The Bureau of Land Management, in cooperation with other federal agencies, has been documenting anomalous occurrences in the Nevada desert for 68 years. Since 1952, we've logged over 400 incidents involving unexplained lights, electromagnetic interference, and temporal anomalies. 400. I couldn't keep the shock out of my voice. 400 documented cases. The actual number is likely much higher, as most incidents go unreported or are attributed to natural causes. The cases we know about all share certain characteristics. They occur in isolated areas, usually on highways or in open desert. They involve electromagnetic effects, vehicle failures, radio interference, battery drains. Many involve visual observations of lights or objects that don't conform to known aircraft profiles, and a significant percentage, about 32%, involve temporal anomalies. Like ours, Reed said quietly. Like yours. Time gaps ranging from minutes to hours. Clocks running fast or slow. Witnesses experiencing time differently than external measurement suggests. In some cases, we've had multiple witnesses with synchronized watches report different times after an encounter. Drummond pulled out a folder and set it on the table. It was thick, labeled with codes I didn't recognize. This is the file on US 95 specifically. 47 incidents over the past 6 decades. Yours is number 48, and what makes yours significant is that it's the first time we've had both law enforcement and civilian witnesses with precise timekeeping equipment during an encounter. She opened the folder and pulled out a photo. It showed an atomic watch identical to Reed's, displayed in what looked like an evidence bag. The time showed 3:42 p.m., but the photo was labeled with a date and timestamp of 3:51 p.m. This was recovered from a witness in '94, Drummond explained. A trucker who reported seeing lights on US 95 near mile marker 82. He experienced a time gap of 11 minutes, and his atomic watch showed a 9-minute discrepancy afterward. That watch is now in a federal facility, still running, still maintaining the wrong time, even though it synchronizes with the atomic clock every night. That's impossible, I said. If it synchronizes, it should correct itself. You'd think so, but it doesn't. It synchronizes, the signal is received, and the watch updates to the wrong time, consistently, as if it's receiving the atomic signal from a parallel timeline where time runs 9 minutes slower than ours. The implications of that made my head hurt. You're saying the watch is functioning correctly, but it's operating in a different time stream. That's one theory. Another is that the watch experienced something during the encounter that fundamentally altered its relationship with time. A third theory, Drummond hesitated. A third theory is that all atomic watches keep perfect time, but time itself isn't as uniform as we think. That there are bubbles or pockets where time runs at different rates, and passing through one of these pockets synchronizes you to a different temporal reference frame. That sounds like science fiction, Sanchez said. So do perfect circles and ground-penetrating radar that absorb electromagnetic signals, Drummond countered. So do lights that can kill a vehicle's electrical system and restart it without touching it. So do time gaps that leave physical evidence in the form of desynchronized atomic clocks. We're dealing with something that doesn't fit our current understanding of physics. The question is whether we expand our understanding or keep pretending it doesn't exist. Mendez leaned forward. What's the federal position on this? Because I've been filing these reports for 8 years, and I've never gotten anything back except acknowledgement that they were received. The official position is that we're investigating natural phenomena that we don't yet understand. Atmospheric effects, geomagnetic anomalies, possibly some kind of undiscovered energy field that affects both machines and human perception of time. The unofficial position... Drummond paused. The unofficial position is that we have no idea what's causing this, but we know it's real, it's consistent, and it's been happening for at least 68 years without any sign of stopping or escalating. What about the circles? I asked. The landing sites. We've found similar patterns at other incident locations. Always circles, always precise dimensions, always leaving no physical trace except the radar anomaly. In some cases, the anomaly fades over time. We've gone back to previous sites and found nothing. In other cases, like your 2 locations, the anomaly is still present weeks or months later. She pulled out more photos, dozens of them, all showing similar circular voids in radar data. Different locations, different dates, but the same impossible precision. We think the circles are some kind of residual effect, Drummond continued. A mark left behind when something interacts with our reality in a way that disrupts the normal electromagnetic spectrum. The fact that you can see them with radar, but not with the naked eye, suggests they exist in a dimension or frequency range that's not visible to human senses. So, what do we do? Reed asked. Just accept that there are invisible circles all over US 95 and hope nothing bad happens? We monitor them, we document them, and we try to understand the pattern. Drummond pulled out a map of Nevada, marked with dozens of red dots. These are all confirmed encounter sites. Notice anything? I studied the map. The dots seemed random at first, but then I saw it. They formed a line, roughly following US 95 and Highway 50, cutting diagonally across the state. But not just any line. The dots were evenly spaced, approximately 5 to 7 miles apart. They're positioned deliberately, I said, like markers along a route. Exactly. Whatever's causing these incidents isn't random. It's following a pattern, marking specific locations with precise spacing. The question is why? What's the significance of these locations? What's being marked? Nobody had an answer to that. The room fell into thoughtful silence, everyone staring at the map with its ominous constellation of red dots. Nevada suddenly looked different, less like empty desert and more like a coordinate grid, a map being slowly filled in by something we couldn't see. "There's one more thing," Kerrigan said quietly. "When I was taking readings at your site, Mason, right around noon today, I got a strange spike on the magnetometer. Just for a few seconds, the magnetic field intensity jumped by 30%, then dropped back to normal. I've never seen anything like it." "What would cause that?" Mendez asked. "Under normal circumstances, nothing. The Earth's magnetic field is relatively stable on these timescales. You don't get sudden spikes like that without a major geological event or a massive electromagnetic pulse. But there was no geological activity, no storm, nothing that would explain it. It just happened." "When exactly?" I asked, though I thought I already knew the answer. Kerrigan checked his notes. 11:47 a.m. Same time you had your encounter, 12 hours later exactly. Of course it was. 12 hours, half a day. As if whatever had marked that spot was checking back, confirming the location, reinforcing the signal. "I think it's going to happen again," I said. Everyone looked at me. "Tonight, 12 hours from now, at 11:47 p.m. I think whatever was out there last night is going to come back." Drummond nodded slowly. "That's possible. We've seen repeat encounters at the same locations, though usually with weeks or months between them, not hours. If you're right, if it comes back tonight, this could be an opportunity." "Opportunity for what?" to observe it under controlled conditions, to have equipment in place, cameras, sensors, multiple witnesses, to potentially make contact. Contact? Reed's voice rose. You want us to go back out there and wait for it to come back? Are you insane? I want to understand what we're dealing with, Drummond said calmly. And yes, that means taking some risks, but you'd be protected. We'd have a full team, military-grade equipment, backup protocols. You wouldn't be alone. I thought about it. The sensible part of me said to refuse, to stay as far away from US 95 as possible, to let someone else volunteer for this particular suicide mission. But another part, the part that had become a cop because I wanted to face problems head-on, was curious. Terrified, but curious. I'll do it, I said. If it's coming back, I want to be there. Mason? Mendez started. No. Whatever this is, it's happening on my patrol route. It stopped my vehicle. It took 6 minutes of my time. I want answers, and I'm not going to get them sitting in the station. Reed looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had. But then he sighed. If you're going, I'm going. Someone has to make sure you don't do anything too stupid. That's settled then, Drummond said. We'll set up a monitoring station at both mile markers, Wanderer 4 and 107. Full sensor suite, cameras, backup power systems. If the phenomenon repeats, we'll capture it. And if it doesn't, she shrugged. Then we'll have wasted one night and gained no new information. But I have a feeling your instinct is correct, Officer Harrow. I think it's coming back. Why? I asked. Why would it come back? Because whatever it is, whatever intelligence is behind these encounters, it's been conducting some kind of survey or study for the past 68 years. Marking locations, leaving evidence, taking measurements. Last night, it encountered 2 human witnesses with sophisticated time-keeping equipment. It took time from you, and now... She gestured at the map with its constellation of red dots. Now it might want to see what happened to that time, where it went, how you've changed because of it. The idea that I'd been changed, fundamentally altered by losing 6 minutes, was disturbing, but I couldn't deny it felt true. Something had shifted in me last night. Some basic assumption about how reality worked had been overwritten, and I was still processing the implications. All right, Mendez said. We do this by the book. Full safety protocols, constant radio contact, backup units standing by. First sign of danger, we abort. Agreed? Agreed, Drummond said. Agreed, I echoed, though I wondered what danger even meant in this context. How do you assess the danger level of something that can stop time? We spent the next 6 hours planning the operation. Drummond's team brought in equipment that looked military in origin. High-end cameras with infrared and ultraviolet spectrum capability, electromagnetic sensors that could detect fluctuations in the Earth's magnetic field, radiation detectors, GPS units with atomic clock synchronization, even equipment for recording gravitational waves. All of it focused on 2 circles in the desert, 2 spots where reality had briefly become negotiable. At 10 o'clock p.m., we drove out to mile marker 104 in a convoy of 6 vehicles. Drummond's team set up their equipment in a precise grid around my encounter location, while Mendez and Sanchez coordinated with county backup positioned at half-mile intervals. Reed and I stood in the center of it all, watching the preparations with a mixture of apprehension and strange excitement. You know this is crazy, right? Reed said. We're out here in the dark, waiting for something that defies physics to show up and potentially kidnap us. When you put it that way, it does sound crazy, I admitted. But what's the alternative? Spend the rest of our lives wondering what it was? Wondering if it's still out there watching us? At least we'd be alive to wonder. Probably, but I didn't become a cop to play it safe. And you didn't take a job driving empty highways at night because you craved security. We both chose to be out here, in the empty places. Maybe this is why. Reed was quiet for a moment. You think there's a reason we were the ones who saw it? Like we were chosen? I don't know, but I intend to find out. At 11:30 p.m., everything was in place. The equipment hummed quietly, sensors recording, cameras filming. Drummond stood beside a bank of monitors, watching readouts I couldn't interpret. Mendez coordinated radio checks with all the backup units, and I stood in the exact spot where my patrol car had died last night, looking up at a sky full of stars, waiting. 11:40 p.m. Nothing. Just desert wind and the distant sound of the equipment generators. 11:45 p.m. One of the sensors beeped. Drummond checked it, her face illuminated by the monitor's glow. Magnetic field fluctuation, she announced. Small but measurable. Same pattern as this morning. 11:46 p.m. Another beep. Electromagnetic interference, someone called out. All frequencies. Wideband disruption. 11:47 p.m. The flash came exactly on time. One brilliant strobe of white light that bleached the entire desert, turning night to day for half a second. Every camera captured it. Every sensor recorded it. And then darkness rushed back in, somehow deeper than before. Cameras are down, someone shouted. All of them simultaneously. Generators are still running, but no power to the equipment, another voice called. Radio's dead, Mendez said, his voice tight. Complete communications blackout. And there, above the highway, exactly where it had been last night, the sphere appeared. Perfect. White, impossible. It hung in the air, pulsing gently, and I felt that same sensation of being observed, analyzed, known. Reed grabbed my arm, his grip tight enough to hurt. It's back, he whispered unnecessarily. The sphere descended slowly until it was perhaps 20 feet above the road surface. Then it split. One sphere became 3, arranged in a triangle, and the triangle began to rotate, slowly at first, then faster. As it spun, the individual lights merged into a ring, a circle of white fire hanging in the darkness. My God, Drummond breathed. She'd approached to stand beside us, all professional distance forgotten. It's beautiful. It was terrifying and beautiful, a sight that shouldn't exist, performing a dance that defied physics and reason. And then I noticed something. The circle it was creating, the ring of light, was exactly the same diameter as the circles in the ground-penetrating radar. 15 meters, precise to the millimeter. It was showing us what it had made, drawing in light the signature it had left in electromagnetic reality. The rotation slowed. The 3 lights separated again, reformed into a triangle, and descended further. They were now perhaps 10 feet above the road, close enough that I could see details in their luminescence. Fractal patterns, geometric forms that hurt to look at, shapes that seemed to exist in more dimensions than my eyes could process. One of the lights broke formation and moved toward me, slowly, deliberately, like it was giving me time to react. I could have run, should have run, but I stood my ground, watching it approach, feeling Reed's grip on my arm loosen as he stepped back. The light stopped 3 feet from me. Up close, it was less a sphere and more a window, a portal showing something beyond. I could see through it, not to the desert on the other side, but to somewhere else. Somewhere with different geometries, different colors, different physics. And in that window, I saw them. The figures. Tall, thin, features that shifted and refused to resolve into anything my brain could categorize as a face. They were watching me through the window, just as I was watching them. One of them raised what might have been a hand. I raised mine in response, a gesture of greeting, of acknowledgement. We weren't alone, had never been alone. And whatever these things were, whatever intelligence stood on the other side of that window, they'd been visiting us, studying us, marking their passage through our world for at least 68 years. The question was, why? What did they want? What were they learning from us? The figure seemed to consider my raised hand. Then the window changed, and I saw myself, standing on the highway, but not now, not this moment. I saw myself at different times, different places, driving my patrol car at various points during my career, walking through the station, sleeping in my bed, all of it captured, recorded, observed. They'd been watching me, not just tonight, not just last night, but for years, maybe my whole life. I was one data point among millions, one spark of consciousness they were cataloging in their vast, incomprehensible study. The window changed again. This time, I saw US 95 from above, the entire highway rendered in light, and along its length, those red dots from Drummond's map, glowing like beacons. But there were more of them than had been on the map. Dozens more. Hundreds. The highway was marked from one end to the other, a pathway traced in locations where reality was thin enough for them to reach through. And at each location, a window. A portal, a doorway between their world and ours. They were building something, or perhaps revealing something that had always been there, invisible until they marked it. A network of connection points, a grid spanning the desert, linking Earth to wherever they came from. The figure lowered its hand. The window began to close, the light fading, and as it disappeared, I felt something change. A slight shift, subtle but unmistakable, in how time felt. Like a clock resynchronizing, realigning, finding its proper speed again. The three lights reformed into a triangle, rose swiftly into the sky, and vanished. Generators roared back to life. Cameras activated, their status lights blinking green. Radios crackled with voices calling for status reports. And on every clock, every watch, every timekeeping device we had, I knew without checking what we'd find. Another time discrepancy. More minutes taken or added, more proof that we'd touched something that existed outside normal causality. Drummond ran to her monitors, checking readouts, her hands flying over keyboards. "We got it all," she said, voice shaking with excitement. "Every sensor captured something. The data's going to take months to analyze, but we got it." Mendez was coordinating with backup units, confirming that everyone had witnessed the lights, that it wasn't isolated to our location. Reed stood beside me, staring up at the empty sky where the triangle had disappeared. "They've been watching us our whole lives," he said quietly. "They know everything about us, and we know almost nothing about them. But now we know they're there," I replied. "We know we're not alone, and maybe that's enough. For now." My watch showed 12:14 a.m. But Reed's atomic watch, the one that had insisted on the wrong time last night, now showed 12:09, 5 minutes behind. We'd lost 5 minutes this time, or the clocks had gained 5, or time had split again in that inexplicable way that left evidence but no explanations. In my pocket, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Thank you for your service tonight. What you witnessed will help us understand. Please maintain discretion. Further contact will be made. PD. Patricia Drummond, thanking me for volunteering to be observed by something we couldn't explain or control." I wasn't sure whether to laugh or cry. "Come on," Mendez said, appearing beside us. "Let's get you both back to the station. We've got a lot of reports to file, and I suspect we're going to be answering questions for a very long time." "What do we tell people?" I asked, "when they ask what happened out here?" "The truth," Mendez said. that we encountered an unexplained phenomenon, that it's being investigated by federal authorities, and that it poses no immediate threat to public safety. Beyond that, he shrugged. Beyond that, we let the experts figure out what it means. But I already knew what it meant, at least partly. It meant the desert kept its secrets until it was ready to reveal them. It meant US 95 and Highway 50 and all the other empty roads through Nevada weren't just connecting cities, but connecting worlds. It meant time was more flexible than we'd thought, and reality was thinner than we'd imagined. And it meant that somewhere above us, in spaces we couldn't see and dimensions we couldn't navigate, something vast and patient and incomprehensibly old was conducting a study that had been running since before any of us were born and would continue long after we were gone. We were specimens, data points, subjects in an experiment we'd never agreed to participate in. But at least now we knew we were being watched. At least now we could watch back. Working road maintenance near Rachel, Nevada means getting used to silence. Not regular quiet, the kind of deep, absolute silence that only exists where civilization has given up trying. Out here, between Highway 375 and the endless stretch of desert leading toward Groom Lake, the only sounds are what you bring with you. The rumble of diesel engines, the scrape of equipment on asphalt, the crackle of radio chatter. Until the night those sounds stopped meaning anything at all. I'm Porter Maddox, Nevada Department of Transportation road crew, 9 years on the job. The last 4 working graveyard shifts in Lincoln County, which means I know this desert better than most people ever will. They call Highway 375 the Extraterrestrial Highway because of all the tourist nonsense about Area 51, which is somewhere out there beyond the mountains, doing whatever classified things the government does in the middle of nowhere. Most locals treat the alien stuff as a joke, a way to sell t-shirts and burgers to conspiracy tourists passing through Rachel on their way to nowhere. I used to think it was funny, too. October 22nd. We'd been contracted to repair a section of damaged asphalt on the unmarked road that runs roughly parallel to 3 and 75, about 8 miles south of Rachel proper. It's not even officially a road, just a rough track that connects some BLM access points and gives the occasional rancher a shortcut. The asphalt had cracked badly during the summer, thermal stress they called it, and our job was to patch it before winter set in and made the damage worse. Simple work, routine, the kind of thing we'd done 100 times before. My partner that night was Lyle Serrano, a guy I'd worked with for about 2 years. Lyle's good people, 41 years old, wife and 2 kids in Alamo, treats the work like meditation. While other guys listen to music or podcasts to pass the time, Lyle just works in silence, finding a rhythm in the scrape and pour of road repair that seems almost zen. We'd started at 10 p.m., when the desert had cooled enough to make the work bearable. 2 trucks, a generator for the lights, and enough patching compound to fill maybe 20 yards of damaged road. Easy 4-hour job, home by 2 a.m., maybe stop for coffee at the Little A Lynn in Rachel if we felt like it. The generator hummed steadily, powering the work lights that turned our little patch of desert into a bubble of harsh white illumination. Beyond that bubble, nothing but darkness and stars. Millions of stars, so bright out here that you could read by them if you had to. The Milky Way stretched across the sky like a river of light, and if you stared at it long enough, you started to feel small, insignificant, just a temporary arrangement of atoms on a rock spinning through an incomprehensibly vast universe. "You ever think about what's out there?" Lyle asked, around 11:30, breaking the comfortable silence we'd been working in. He was spreading compound with a long-handled trowel, smoothing it carefully into the cracks. "Out where?" I was mixing another batch of compound. the smell of hot asphalt sharp in the cold air. Out there, he gestured at the sky with his free hand. All those stars. Gotta be something living around at least some of them, right? Can't all be empty. I looked up. The stars looked back, indifferent and eternal. Probably. Universe is pretty big. But if there is anything out there, it's too far away to matter. We'll never know about it, and it'll never know about us. Maybe. Lyle went back to smoothing compound. Or maybe it's closer than we think. This is the right area for it, if all the stories are true. You believe that stuff? The Area 51 conspiracy theories? I don't know what I believe. But I know the government's got something out there beyond those mountains, and they don't want people asking questions about it. That's not a conspiracy. That's just fact. What they're hiding, though, he shrugged. Could be experimental aircraft. Could be something else. We went back to work, the conversation fading into comfortable silence again. The generator hummed. The work lights blazed. I mixed compound, Lyle spread it, and slowly the damaged section of road began to look like road again instead of a jigsaw puzzle of broken asphalt. At 11:47 p.m., everything changed. I was bent over the compound mixer when I heard Lyle stop working. Not just pause, but stop completely. No scrape of trowel, no shuffle of boots, no breathing. Complete stillness that made my skin prickle with instinctive alarm. I looked up and saw him standing frozen, trowel hanging loose in his hand, staring at something behind me with an expression I'd never seen on his face before. Not quite fear, not quite wonder, but something in between that made my heart kick up a notch. "Porter," he said quietly. His voice had gone flat, toneless, like someone in shock. "Turn around." Slowly. The way he said it, the careful control in his voice, made my blood run cold. I turned slowly, like he'd instructed, and looked toward the desert to the west, away from the road. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. My brain tried to categorize it as something normal. Aircraft, maybe a helicopter with a searchlight. But it was wrong. All wrong. The shape was wrong. The movement was wrong. And most of all, the silence was wrong. It was descending from the sky, perhaps a quarter-mile away, moving with a slow, deliberate steadiness that reminded me of an elevator. But it wasn't falling, wasn't dropping like something under the influence of gravity. It was descending with purpose, with control, lowering itself toward the desert floor with impossible grace. The shape was triangular. 3 points of brilliant white light, one at each corner connected by what looked like a solid structure. I say looked like because my eyes kept sliding off it, unable to focus on the surface. It was dark, but not quite black, absorbing light rather than reflecting it, and the edges seemed to shimmer like heat distortion on summer asphalt. The size was hard to judge at that distance, but I'd guess 50 feet from point to point, maybe 60. Big enough that there was no mistaking it for a drone or small aircraft. And the lights at the corners weren't blinking or flashing like navigation lights should. They burned steady and bright, pure white with a faint blue tinge, casting 3 pillars of illumination down toward the desert floor. And it was completely silent. No engine roar, no rotor wash, no whistle of air displacement. Just silence, absolute and complete, as something massive and impossible lowered itself toward the earth. The only sound was our generator still humming behind us, a mechanical counterpoint to the unnatural quiet of the thing in the sky. "What the hell is that?" Lyle's voice was barely above a whisper. "I don't know." We stood there, completely paralyzed, watching it descend. The generator hummed, the work lights blazed, and the thing in the sky came down without making any sound at all. It reached what I estimated was about 20 feet above the ground and stopped. Just hung there, motionless. The 3 points of light creating a perfect triangle in the darkness. The pillars of light it cast illuminated the desert below. Sagebrush, rocks, sand, showing nothing unusual, nothing disturbed. Just normal desert terrain underneath something that was anything but normal. "We should call this in," I said, reaching for the radio clipped to my belt. My hands were shaking badly enough that I fumbled with the clip. "We should wait." Lyle held up his hand, still staring at the triangle. "Look, it's doing something." The triangle was rotating. Slowly at first, just a gentle spin around what I assumed was some central axis. Then it picked up speed. The 3 points of light traced a circle in the air, maintaining their triangular configuration but spinning around that invisible center point. As it spun faster, the individual lights began to blur together into a continuous ring, like a wheel of fire suspended in the sky. And then I heard the sound. Not from the triangle itself, but from our radio. Lyle's radio, clipped to his belt, suddenly burst into life with a sound I'd never heard before and hoped never to hear again. Not static, not interference, but a deep, resonant hum. Low frequency, felt as much as heard, vibrating through my chest cavity and making my teeth ache. Lyle grabbed his radio and held it up, staring at it in confusion and growing alarm. The sound was coming from the speaker, loud and clear, that deep thrumming that seemed to carry intelligence, meaning, purpose. Not language as I understood it, but definitely communication of some kind. A signal. "What is that?" Lyle practically shouted over the noise. "What frequency is this? What's broadcasting?" I checked my own radio. It was silent, dead, even though it was powered on and the battery indicator showed full charge. But Lyle's radio continued to emit that awful, mesmerizing hum, the sound filling the desert and making the very air vibrate with its presence. The triangle stopped spinning. The lights separated again into 3 distinct points, and the entire formation began to move. Not rising, but traveling laterally, gliding across the desert toward us with the same silent, impossible grace it had shown while descending. It was coming closer, coming toward us, coming toward our work site. "We need to go," I said, grabbing Lyle's arm hard enough to bruise. The fabric of his jacket felt wrong somehow, too textured, as if all my senses had been heightened. "Right now. Get in the truck." But Lyle wasn't moving. He was staring at the radio in his hand, at the speaker still emitting that resonant hum, and I could see something happening to his face. Not fear exactly, but a kind of transfixed fascination, like he was hearing something in that sound that I couldn't perceive. Like the hum was speaking to him in a language that bypassed words entirely, communicating directly with some part of his brain that I didn't have access to. "Lyle," I shook him hard. "We're leaving, now." He blinked, looked at me, and nodded slowly. The spell broke. We turned and ran for the trucks, boots crunching on gravel, the generator still humming behind us, work lights still blazing on an unfinished patch of road that suddenly seemed completely irrelevant compared to the thing gliding toward us through the darkness. I reached my truck first, yanked the door open, and jumped inside. The engine started immediately, thank God, a sound so normal and familiar it felt like a lifeline to reality. Through the windshield I could see the triangle still approaching, now perhaps 100 yards away, maybe less. The 3 points of light were so bright they hurt to look at directly, like staring at welding arcs or the sun itself. Lyle's truck started too. I saw him behind the wheel, his face pale in the glow of his dashboard lights. His radio was still on his belt, and even through the closed doors of our vehicles I could hear that humming. It was getting louder, deeper, resonating in a frequency that made my truck's frame vibrate sympathetically, like a tuning fork responding to the right note. My headlights were on, pointed back toward the work site. In their beams, I could see something that made my breath catch in my throat. The triangle was now directly above our work area, hovering no more than 30 feet up, and the 3 beams of light it cast were illuminating the generator, the equipment, the partially repaired road with an intensity that made everything look unreal, like a stage set or a dream. The beams looked almost solid somehow, like pillars of white crystal rather than light, and where they touched the ground, the illuminated areas seemed to shimmer and distort as if reality itself was bending under the weight of whatever this thing was. And then every light went out. Not just the triangle's lights, but everything. The work lights, my truck's headlights, the generator. Even my dashboard lights died, the engine cutting out instantly with a mechanical wheeze. Through the windshield I saw Lyle's truck go dark too, the red glow of his taillights extinguishing like candles snuffed by wind. Total darkness. Complete silence except for that humming from Lyle's radio, which somehow, impossibly, kept working even though everything else had failed. Every other electronic device rendered instantly dead. And in that darkness, I could still see the triangle. Not because it was lit anymore, but because it was darker than the surrounding night, a void in the shape of 3 connected points, blocking out the stars behind it with its presence. It hung there for what might have been 5 seconds or 50. Time felt elastic and strange, my perception warped by fear and adrenaline, just hovering in perfect, impossible stillness. Then, the humming stopped. The silence that followed was so complete it felt like pressure against my eardrums, like being deep underwater. No engine sounds, no electronic hum, no desert wind, not even the distant cry of coyotes that usually filled the night. Just nothing. An absence of sound so profound it was like being sealed in a tomb or thrust into the vacuum of space. And in that terrible silence the triangle rose. Faster than it had descended, faster than anything that size should be able to move according to every law of physics I understood, it shot straight up into the sky and vanished. Not gradually, not fading into distance with decreasing size, but just gone. There one instant and absent the next, as if it had punched through into some other dimension or simply ceased to exist in ours. Lights blazed back to life. My truck's engine roared. The dashboard lit up like Christmas. The generator kicked back on with a cough and a rattle. The work lights flooded our little patch of desert with their harsh white glow. Everything was normal again. Everything was working, as if nothing had happened. As if the past few minutes had been a shared hallucination, a mutual psychotic break. Except something had happened. I could feel it in my bones, in the way my hands trembled on the steering wheel, in the racing of my heart and the cold sweat soaking through my uniform shirt. Something impossible had been here, had examined us, or our work, or the desert itself with those searching beams of light, and then had left as suddenly as it had appeared. I grabbed my door handle and practically fell out of the truck, needing to see Lyle, needing to confirm that he'd seen it too, that I wasn't having some kind of breakdown or psychotic episode. He was already out of his truck, standing in the work lights, holding his radio in both hands and staring at it like it was something alien itself, something that had betrayed him. "Did you see that?" His voice was hoarse, strained. "Please tell me you saw that." I saw it. I walked toward him on unsteady legs, my boots feeling like they weighed 100 pounds each. Triangle shape, 3 lights, completely silent. And then everything shut down, and it just left. "The radio," Lyle said, holding it up so I could see. His hands were shaking almost as badly as mine. It was making that sound, that humming, and Porter, I could hear things in it. Not words, but patterns, rhythms, mathematical sequences maybe, or musical notes, I don't know. Like it was trying to communicate something I was this close to understanding. What kind of patterns? I don't know how to describe it. Mathematical, musical, both at once, neither? He shook his head in frustration. I know how crazy that sounds, but I swear I could almost understand what it was saying. Like it was on the edge of making sense, but in a language I don't have words for. A language I don't have the mental equipment to process. Like, he struggled for the metaphor. Like looking at sheet music when you don't know how to read music. You can see there's meaning there, structure, information encoded in those symbols, but you can't decode it. You can't translate it into anything you can use. I wanted to tell him he was imagining things, that the stress of seeing something impossible had made him hear meaning in random noise, pattern in chaos. But I'd seen his face when he was listening to that hum, transfixed and focused in a way I'd never seen before. He'd been receiving something, even if he couldn't fully translate it, even if his brain wasn't wired to process whatever information was being transmitted. We need to check the radio, I said. These things record continuously, right? For safety compliance? Lyle nodded slowly, pulling out his phone with still shaking hands. Yeah. Continuous recording. Last 8 hours stored locally before uploading to the cloud. If that sound was real, if it really happened, it'll be in the recording. It has to be. He opened the NDOT Fleet Management app and pulled up the radio log interface, fumbling with the touchscreen. The screen showed a timeline of transmissions from his unit, a visual representation of every broadcast and reception over the past several hours. The most recent entry was time-stamped 11:47:36 p.m., right when the triangle had been overhead, right when that sound had filled the desert and vibrated through our bones. There, Lyle said, pointing at the screen with a trembling finger. Play that. That has to be it. The entry showed a transmission lasting 8 seconds, from 11:47:36 to 11:47:44. 8 seconds of something. The waveform displayed on screen showed activity, peaks and valleys indicating that audio had definitely been captured, that the microphone had detected sound, and the system had recorded it. Lyle tapped the play button. We both held our breath, waiting to hear that deep, resonant humming again, to have confirmation that what we'd experienced was real and documented, that we had proof. Nothing. Not static, not the hum, not even silence in the normal sense, the kind of background ambient noise you always get on recordings. It was like the recording had captured a void, an absence, 8 seconds of audio that contained nothing at all. The speaker emitted no sound whatsoever, but the timestamp counted down normally, indicating that the file was playing, that data was being accessed and processed. We listened to 8 seconds of absolute nothing, and then the recording ended. That's impossible, Lyle said, his voice rising with agitation and confusion. I heard it. We both heard it. That humming was real. It was loud. It was right here. It nearly deafened me. How can there be no recording of it? Try playing an earlier transmission, I suggested, grasping for rational explanations. Make sure the recording system is actually working, that it's not just broken. He scrolled back to 11:34 p.m., a brief exchange between our work site and the dispatch center in Caliente about our progress and expected completion time. Tapped play. This time, voices came through clearly. Routine traffic, completely normal, exactly what you'd expect to hear. The radio's working fine, Lyle said, his face pale in the glow of his phone screen. He played the silent transmission again. Still nothing. 8 seconds of void, of emptiness, of captured absence. The recording system is working fine. It recorded everything before and after. But that 8 seconds during the encounter, during the transmission, he stared at the phone screen as if it had betrayed him. It's not corrupted. The file isn't damaged. It's just empty. Like something deleted the audio but left the timestamp and file structure intact. Or like, I said slowly, working through the implications. Something recorded, something that can't be captured by normal recording equipment. Something existing outside the frequency range our devices can process, or in a dimension or spectrum that our technology isn't designed to perceive. We stood there in the work lights, surrounded by our equipment and our half-finished road repair, holding a radio that had captured proof of something impossible by recording an absence, by documenting nothing at all, by creating a perfect 8-second void where something undeniably real had existed. "We need to report this," I said finally. Lyle looked at me for a long moment. "Report what exactly? That we saw a UFO? That we heard a sound that somehow didn't get recorded even though the radio was working perfectly? That our equipment shut down and restarted instantly with no technical malfunction we can identify? Porter, they'll think we're crazy, or drunk, or high, or trying to scam workman's comp, or just trying to get out of finishing a boring job. We can't just not report it. Something real happened here, something documented. We have the timestamp, we have the recording. Even if the recording is silent, it's still evidence of an anomaly, of something interfering with normal electronic function. We have to tell someone. We have to report it through proper channels. To who? Official channels? NDOT management? The cops?" Lyle shook his head. "They'll rationalize it. Equipment malfunction. Atmospheric phenomenon. Mass hallucination caused by too much coffee and not enough sleep. That's what they always say when something doesn't fit the accepted model of reality. They'll explain it away and then put a note in our files that we might be unstable." He had a point. I'd worked for NDOT long enough to know how bureaucracies dealt with uncomfortable reports, with data that didn't fit established patterns. They minimized, rationalized, explained away, especially reports of things that couldn't exist according to accepted scientific reality. It was easier to blame the witnesses than to acknowledge that the universe might be stranger than the textbooks admitted. "But what if we're not the only ones?" I said. "What if other people have seen things out here and kept quiet for the same reasons? Fear of ridicule, fear of not being believed, fear of ending up with a psych evaluation instead of a thank you. How many encounters never got reported because people were afraid? How many pieces of evidence are sitting in desk drawers and old file cabinets because someone decided it was better to stay quiet than to risk their reputation?" Lyle was quiet for a long moment, staring at his phone, at that 8-second gap of recorded nothing. Then he said, "There's a number. I heard about it from another crew member about 6 months ago, guy who works the Tonopah sector. A number you can call for unusual incidents. Not official dispatch, not the cops, but something else. Something specifically for reports that don't fit normal categories." "What kind of number? Who runs it?" "I don't know exactly. Government, maybe federal or military. Someone who takes reports about strange things people see near restricted areas, near military installations." He scrolled through his contacts with shaking fingers. "Here, I saved it in my phone, but I never thought I'd actually need to use it. Thought it was just another conspiracy theory thing, you know? But now," he showed me the screen. A phone number with the 702 area code, Las Vegas, and a saved contact name that was both mundane and ominous, Unusual Incident Hotline. "Call it," I said, without hesitation. "You sure? Once we make this call, once we officially report this to whoever answers." He trailed off, the implications hanging in the air between us. "We can't take it back. It goes on record somewhere, and we don't know who's on the other end of that line, or what they'll do with the information." We saw what we saw. We have evidence, even if that evidence is strange and doesn't make conventional sense. If there's someone whose job it is to document this kind of thing, they need to know about it. Because if it happened to us tonight, it's probably happened to others before. And it'll probably happen again to someone else tomorrow or next week or next month. We have to report it. We have to try. Lyle took a deep breath and dialed. The phone rang 3 times. I counted them, needing something concrete to focus on, then clicked to what sounded like a recorded message. But the voice wasn't the usual flat, affectless monotone of a standard answering service. It was calm, professional, carefully modulated to be reassuring without being condescending. Thank you for calling the Unusual Incident Hotline. If you are reporting an aerial phenomenon, press 1. If you are reporting an electromagnetic event, press 2. If you are reporting a temporal anomaly, press 3. If you are reporting multiple types of phenomena simultaneously, press 4. To speak with a live operator immediately, press 0. Lyle looked at me, uncertainty in his eyes. I nodded firmly. He pressed 4. Please hold. Your call is important and will be answered by the next available operator. For your safety and ours, please remain at your current location until contact is established. Do not leave the area. Do not discuss this call with anyone who is not present at your location. Thank you. The line went to hold music. But it wasn't the usual elevator music you'd expect from a government hotline. It was something stranger, an ambient hum, low and resonant, that reminded me uncomfortably of the sound that had come from Lyle's radio. Whether that was deliberate, meant to desensitize or prepare callers, or just an eerie coincidence, I couldn't say. But it made my skin crawl. We waited. The generator hummed its familiar rhythm behind us. The work lights continued to blaze, creating our bubble of artificial normalcy in the vast darkness of the desert. And somewhere to the west, invisible now but impossibly, undeniably present in our minds, was the empty space where the triangle had descended, had hovered, had reached out to us with beams of structured light and sounds our equipment couldn't properly capture. After what felt like 5 minutes, but was probably closer to 2, time still felt unreliable, elastic. The hold music cut off and a live voice came on the line. Male, middle-aged, with the kind of professional calm that suggested he'd taken calls like this many times before and knew exactly what he was doing. Unusual Incident Hotline, this is Operator Morris. I need to verify your location for emergency response and investigation purposes. Can you provide GPS coordinates or a detailed landmark description? We're on the access road that runs parallel to Highway 375, Lyle said, his voice steadier now, falling into the familiar pattern of official communication. About 8 miles south of Rachel, Nevada. Road repair crew, Nevada Department of Transportation. We're at... I have your phone's GPS coordinates, Morris interrupted gently. They're confirming that location. Thank you. Now, can you describe the incident that prompted your call? Take your time. Include as much detail as you can remember. Lyle took a deep breath and described everything, his voice growing stronger and more confident as he spoke. The descending triangle. The 3 points of white light forming that perfect geometric shape. The completely silent movement. The radio hum that had vibrated through bone and tissue. The complete power failure of every electronic system in the immediate area. The 8-second recording that contained nothing despite clearly showing that something had been captured. He spoke calmly, factually, describing what had happened with the same precision and attention to detail he'd use when filling out an equipment maintenance log or accident report. When he finished, there was a pause on the other end of the line. Not the pause of disbelief or skepticism, but the pause of someone accessing information, checking something against a database, comparing our report to existing data. Then, Operator Morris said, "Thank you for that detailed and thorough report. I need to ask you some specific follow-up questions. Did either of you experience any physical symptoms during the encounter or immediately after? Nausea, headache, dizziness, temporary vision impairment, nosebleeds, anything like that?" "No," Lyle said after glancing at me for confirmation. "We're both fine physically. Shaken up, but not hurt." "Did you experience any sense of time distortion? Minutes feeling like hours, or the reverse? Any sensation that time was moving at an unusual rate, or that you'd lost track of time?" "It felt longer than it actually was," Lyle admitted. "But when I checked my phone afterward, only about 7 or 8 minutes had passed from first sighting to departure. It felt like longer in the moment, maybe 15 or 20 minutes. But I think that was just perception, just the way fear stretches out time." "Understood. That's a common reported effect. Did you attempt to photograph or video record the phenomenon with your personal devices?" Lyle and I looked at each other, realization and regret dawning simultaneously. Neither of us had even thought of it. We'd been too shocked, too focused on watching and trying to process what we were seeing, too overwhelmed by the sheer impossibility of it to think about documentation beyond what we'd already accidentally captured with the radio system. "No," Lyle said quietly. "We didn't think to. We were too," he struggled for the right word, "too stunned, I guess. Too focused on just trying to understand what we were looking at." "That's completely normal and very common," Morris said, and I could hear the reassurance in his voice. "Most witnesses don't. The human startle response and threat assessment system prioritizes immediate observation and evaluation over documentation. It's evolutionary. Our ancestors needed to watch the predator, not stop to draw a picture of it. Don't feel bad about it. You've already provided more documentation than most encounters generate." Papers rustled on the other end of the line, the sound reassuringly mundane. "Mr. Serrano, I'm going to arrange for a specialized team to visit your location. They'll want to conduct a thorough site examination, interview both of you in detail about every aspect of your experience, and retrieve your radio for technical analysis of that recording anomaly. This is entirely voluntary. You're not under any legal obligation to cooperate, and you can refuse at any time. But your testimony and physical evidence could be extremely valuable for ongoing federal research into these phenomena. Are you willing to wait at your current location for them to arrive?" "Research?" I leaned closer to Lyle's phone, no longer caring about protocol. "What kind of research are we talking about? Who's conducting it? What branch of government?" "The federal government, through the Department of Defense and several cooperating agencies, maintain several ongoing scientific studies of anomalous aerial phenomena occurring in proximity to restricted military installations and testing ranges," Morris said carefully, choosing every word with obvious precision. "Your incident occurred in an area with a documented, statistically significant high frequency of similar reports going back several decades. If you're willing to provide detailed sworn statements and allow analysis of your physical evidence, we can ensure your experience is properly documented and investigated by qualified specialists using appropriate scientific methodology. This isn't some kind of cover-up or debunking operation. It's legitimate scientific inquiry into phenomena that we don't yet fully understand, but that clearly exist and deserve serious study." Lyle looked at me, a silent question in his eyes. "Do we trust this? Do we do this?" I thought about it for maybe 3 seconds, then nodded firmly. Whatever this was, it beat the alternative of being dismissed or ridiculed, or having our report filed away in some bureaucratic dead end. "We'll wait," Lyle said into the phone. "Excellent. Thank you for your cooperation and your willingness to contribute to our understanding. A specialized investigation team is being dispatched from our Las Vegas facility right now. They should reach your location in approximately 40 to 45 minutes depending on traffic and road conditions. In the meantime, for your safety and theirs, I need you to follow some specific protocols. First, please remain in your vehicles with engines running. Don't stand outside in the open. Second, do not approach the area where the phenomenon appeared or was hovering. Maintain a distance of at least 50 feet. Third, do not attempt to collect any physical samples from that location. Let the specialists handle that with proper equipment. Fourth, if the phenomenon returns before the team arrives, do not approach it under any circumstances. Observe from a safe distance inside your vehicles only, and call this number back immediately. Is all of this completely clear? Yes, Lyle said. Crystal clear. We'll follow all protocols. Good, excellent. Thank you again for your cooperation and for reporting this incident. The work you're doing tonight by documenting this experience is genuinely important. Someone will be with you very shortly. Please call back at this number immediately if the situation changes in any way, if the phenomenon returns, or if you feel unsafe. Don't hesitate. That's what we're here for. The line went dead with a soft click. Lyle lowered his phone slowly, staring at it like it might suddenly start emitting that hum again. Did that really just happen? Did we really just report a UFO encounter to some kind of government hotline? And did they really just say they're sending a specialized investigation team to interview us and collect evidence? I think so, I said, my own voice sounding strange to my ears, distant and tinny, like I was listening to someone else talk. I think we just stepped into something a lot bigger than a road repair job. A lot bigger than we ever imagined. Yeah. Lyle walked back to his truck and climbed inside, leaving the door open so we could still talk. I did the same, both of us sitting in our vehicles with engines running like Morris had instructed, waiting for whoever was coming to examine the place where a triangle made of darkness and impossible light had descended in complete silence and changed everything we thought we knew about what was possible in this universe. Above us, the stars shone on, indifferent and eternal as they'd always been. But I found myself watching them with new suspicion now, with new awareness, wondering how many of those distant points of light were just stars, burning balls of gas millions or billions of light years away, and how many might be something else entirely, something that watched back with patient, incomprehensible intelligence. The desert had always kept its secrets well, hiding them in vast distances and empty spaces. But tonight, just for a few minutes, it had revealed one of those secrets to us. And I had the distinct, uncomfortable feeling that we'd only seen the smallest glimpse, the tiniest fraction, of something much, much larger than we could possibly comprehend. Something that had been here long before us and would remain long after we were gone. Something that regarded us with curiosity, perhaps, or clinical interest, but certainly not fear. We were being studied, had been studied maybe for years or decades or longer. And now we knew it, and knowing changed everything.